final rules governing educator licensure, this big set of rules that we've looked at before. But those are not going, because of some challenges with getting those approved by the pertinent legislative committees, we have gotten a request to add an emergency, identical emergency set of rules to allow those to move forward and give districts guidance on hiring process. So this does require a 2/3 vote because it was not on the agenda before that was published in a timely fashion. So I would invite a motion to add that item to the agenda for this afternoon in that same place.
Move to add the item in spot B2.
All right.
Second.
Great. So motion by Ms. Newton, second by Ms. Reith. All those in favor of that addition?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, so we have a 2/3 vote, unanimous vote, and so that is a change to the agenda. Okay? All right. We are, first up, we have the consent agenda for today. Are there, I know that Ms. Newton said she had a couple of comments, but any items that need to be pulled or given special treatment?
I think we should, I don't know if you want to pull it or just use it as a comment, the legislative reports on Dollar Way and Little Rock.
Okay. Why don't we treat those, did you have, you think it's primarily comments and questions?
You know, just
Okay.
here's where we are, where are we going, what is going to, do we anticipate
Okay. All right.
moving forward,
Okay.
teaching more faster?
Yes. So why don't we just pull those off since it sounds like it's a little more substantive. So we will pull item 2 to be considered separately. Anything else? Okay. Ms. Newton, did you have comments on other items?
Yeah, then it's nothing to pull or anything. I just want to give some thanks to Dr. Oy and his team, because anytime I ask for they're just immediately responding back and getting me the information. And I added the total column to the ALP and substitute waivers. So I really appreciate your extra hard work and thank you for what you do. And also for the Professional License Standards Board. For the ones that are working on that, thank you for sending us the rubric this time. That was very helpful.
Great. Okay.
And also, I don't see Mr. Rogers. Is someone here from his department?
We got a few.
Okay.
Depends on the question.
Okay, the
Depends on
question.
the question.
Okay. There seemed to be quite a wide variance on the debt ratio, all the way from 7.0 up to 31.31. And I either have to get Mr. Black and Mr. Williamson or somebody more in depth about finance than I to see.
Cindy's here.
Yeah. So we're on item 3, correct, Ms.?
Yes.
Yes. Good morning.
Not very well.
Did I push this? Okay, there. The debt ratio is calculated by taking the monthly debt payments, and we look at the proposed debt payments in comparison to the assessed value. So we come up with a debt ratio in that way. When school districts issue bonds, they are required to use a fiscal agent, and there's a bond attorney, and there's a lot of checking and ensuring that there's an adequate revenue stream to support the bonds. So that's all been done. Years ago, there was a debt ratio limit in state law, but that was removed. It was removed in maybe 2006 is my guess, and I've got the law that took it out if you want to see that. But anyway, we just still report it, and there's just a wide variation because of the wide variation in the assessed value of the different areas. But anyway, they all have a revenue stream in the millage rate and the ad valorem taxes to support the debt payments.
So this did not put up red flags for finance?
No.
Okay. All right, that's good. You're good, I'm good.
Okay.
All right. I'd invite a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 2. Motion by Mr. Black, second by Mr. Williamson. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. All right. Item 2, the quarterly reports on Little Rock and Dollarway, and I'll turn that over to Mike Hernandez.
Dr. Barth, while Dr. Hernandez is preparing, let me just say, you may look for some folks on our team and not see them, like Mr. Rogers. He's at a very important training downtown with DF&A, Office of Personnel Management, and other members of the leadership team are traveling. So we have very capable folks here that are subbing, so we tried to make sure that we had folks that can answer questions based on what we saw on the agenda. But Ms. Kaufman, Dr. Pfeffer, Dr. Saunders, and trying to think, they're all out of state. Dr. O's here, Stacy Smith, Ms. Smith, there she is. So they're here, and like I said, we've got folks here that can help address whatever comes up.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Hernandez.
Good morning, Dr. Mike Hernandez, State Superintendent for Office of Coordinated Support and Service. The reports that you have here are structured in such a way that around the 6 systems, especially with our state takeover districts next cycle, which will be in May, as far as for legislative reports, that will also include Earl. But I'd be happy to answer any questions specifically about the report structure. We also have Superintendent Mike Poore and Superintendent, I believe Ms. Warren is here also. So if there are any specific questions, we can try to answer those.
Okay. I'll start with Ms. Hook.
Okay, just sort of going through the report, I'm, back on my what's being done at the elementaries to shore up and get these kids. It's unfortunate that it reflects on the middle school and the high school when the children they are receiving are 3 or 4 years behind. So, there's, that's unfortunate, but is there something in particular that is being done that we don't get a report on because the elementary school was not in need of added support? Can you reassure us that something is being done at the elementary level to address these issues?
Right. So, for example, I know with the way the reports are structured in Little Rock, the only elementary school that they're currently reporting on is Baseline. I know in discussions with the school district, there are some things that are being done, and I can allow Mr. Poore to come up and speak to that. But I will also point out that in Dollarway's report, they've actively, on their own, even though their elementary school wasn't identified as a priority or focus, they've gone and took a step above and actually started reporting and putting in a structure for them. And that is reflected in the report about the things that they are doing within the elementary school to try to make sure they know that they're feeding into their middle school and know that they're feeding into their high school to try to make some key changes and differences there. But I can also let Ms. Warren answer questions specifically about some of that.
Yeah, I really would like to hear
Okay.
about that, like the specifics
Okay.
of what's being done.
Which one, Ms. Warren or Mr. Poore?
Let's start with Mr. Poole.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. And I'm just going to move this over just a tad. Ms. Zook, just a couple things that I would share. If you don't mind, I'll just make a general opening statement and then dive into it. We are on a really good track with so many things in the district right now, and so I do want to bring that up. I know that you got inundated in your Facebook pages or emails or text messages on a lunch thing. We hope that Channel 11 is going to cover that today to show the balance of the meals, and that sometimes students make selections that create their empty plates, and that they do have choices. So I'll leave that alone. We also have had just a wonderful science fair this past week with elementary, packed house, great participation. We also have the One District, One Book effort getting ready to take place, which fits into the RISE, teaching financial literacy, all elementary K-5 elementary students reading. That will kick off in April, and we kicked it off with our principal group today to generate their excitement. And you will see your superintendent on the roof tomorrow working from the roof. And elementary kids pick this date, and remember, they picked this date 8 weeks ago. Think about what happened yesterday. Think about on your cell phone how your weather changes just within a week. They were really close, and I'm so glad that they didn't get that quite right, or that the weather adjusted. So what do we do on elementary level? I think one of the first things we need to realize is that, you know, even the reporting levels and mechanisms that we're receiving right now as a part of the ESSA, it's a game changer. It's a game changer for every district, and it's a game changer for Little Rock School District. The data that we now are going to receive in terms of subpopulations and measuring growth, it's dramatic. So if you go look at a school like Watson, and if you remember, I talked to all of you about Watson Elementary at the state board meeting when we were talking about charter expansion. And I told you that, you know, Watson had done a lot of things that had really improved at that school, including their literacy effort. The report actually shows that in a much better way, and especially shows what's going on with some of the sub-pops, in particular with their ELL students that they're trying to work on and work with. So this reporting mechanism is, I think, going to be a game changer, and I applaud the department and you as a board for making that happen. Second, the RISE initiative. I want to bring that up right now, that those things, the RISE initiative and ESSA report, it doesn't get brought up in a report like this. That could be because we're not used to the report, which I'm going to come back to in just a minute. But the RISE initiative, I hope that you will hear from the department members that the Little Rock School District is head over shoulders, knee deep in trying to make sure that we improve. And we've targeted the schools that are receiving that RISE training to the schools that needed the biggest boost. Next, we are having the Achieve meetings that I've spoke to you about numerous times over this year-and-a-half span, where we go in and have real discussions. Yesterday was at Washington Elementary. Their specific request had been on professional development on both reading and writing that they needed. All those boxes got checked off yesterday. That staff is at a whole nother level of excitement. And I think you're going to see some real positive gains and movement forward, because you're right, the whole feeder system ultimately ends up creating the ninth grader that's, you know, 4 grades behind on the reading level. And the last thing that I was going to bring up is that we've also taken from others. So the grade level reading initiative where we really became aware of it is through the Springdale schools. We've also worked on that, and again targeted it to the schools that had some of our lowest performances in reading to try to make sure that we improve. Now, grade level reading, as you all know, is not just about, you know, what you do to try to enhance the reading levels and the support for the teachers, but it's also about an effort to improve attendance, which I'm sure is another factor. I know it is from Ms. Suka, a factor that she's brought up on previous state board meetings, that we've got to work on that as well. So I hope that helps a little bit, give a little more depth.
And the other question, which you may need to speak with your principal about this, so you may not have an answer. In the report on Henderson, it's talked about the teacher absence, and thus it affects morale because they have to impose on other teachers to cover classes. Is there not a sufficient number of subs that can come into those classrooms? And I'm saying this may not be something that you specifically can address because it's a building level. But
No, actually, I would like to address that, so thank you. First off, we've actually had a much higher rate of coverage on our subs throughout this year, so that actually has worked pretty well. But the challenge is that when you have a teacher gone, and you all know this, is that if a teacher's not in that classroom, there's a gap in instruction. And so, you know, what you try to do is overcome that with bringing in other people into those rooms to support the learning, so that we don't have, especially if someone's gone for 5 days or 10 days or is on a long-term disability, that you've got to insert educators into that room. And so we have people that are floating to try to help and support. And I think that's really where that comment came from with Henderson, but it also pertains a little bit to Cloverdale as well. If you look at their data, they had some of the same types of information. One last thing, I'll take advantage of her question if you don't mind, is that the other thing that I think we all should take in stock is with this 45-day report, we're learning a little bit, guys. So I think the department's learning a little bit, we're learning a little bit. it freaks us out a little bit in the education world for people to say, we want you to have your plan in there because we have been so used to compliance that we're not used to that. So, we're used to being told, put all this information in, and there was a ton of data that you all were receiving. And what we're hearing from the department, and I think you have guided us and appreciate the fact of trying to get down into what is it that really Baseline needs, what is it that Cloverdale Henderson needs. So we're a little bit of a work on progress on this. If you were to have looked at the draft report from 3 months ago to this report, it's much better, but we have a lot more to do to improve on how we work on this. And I think it's a little bit of almost like a trust issue that we don't really believe that we're being empowered in some ways to generate our own report. But I appreciate where the department's going. I think you're going to see an improved product each time that it comes, and maybe Dollarway feels the same way.
One of the things I know that Darmont did was they have like a health clinic within the school, and I know that, I know that there are some of those in your schools. Do you notice that there is a better student and teacher attendance in those buildings that have that service? So, maybe a teacher doesn't have to leave to go pick up her kid at another school, and everybody is on the stay healthy as opposed to be absent. Do you have some of those programs within your school?
We do have those programs in our school, but I'm not aware of the data piece to tell you whether or not that's an accurate statement. We could certainly provide that, but I couldn't tell you today whether that's true.
Okay. And another thing that, other than attendance, I noticed that in these reports for both districts, a lot of the lack of attendance by staff is because of PD days. And I just think as a state, this isn't directed at you, but I think as a state, we have got to do something about doing, if teachers are needing this much PD, and the legislature thinks they do, and we know that higher ed is not training them, we have got to figure out a way to get the PD in the summer or other times when students are not supposed to be in school, because I would almost venture to say that if a teacher, that she's not going to learn as much as the child fails to learn in a day out for PD. I don't know if I said that where it's understandable, but we have got to figure out something, whether it's a matter of money or what, but having people out of the classroom for PD is just, particularly when we can't help, like the flu epidemic, we can't help if people are having flu or have children who do or don't have babysitters or whatever. But the things we can control, we keep saying whole child and wraparound service. Well, we know that educators, just like parents, we can't do everything, but we have got to work within the system that we're given and figure out how we can fix this. And PD is something that we, in fact, can have an influence on about when it happens. So you get to stand there while I'm on my soapbox. But
if I could, I'll jump on with you.
that you or your fellow superintendents or people in the department or legislators or whoever, but I am more than willing, and I think this board is, to work with whomever to figure out a way to get the teachers the help they need, but not at the expense of the students in the classroom.
I think the commissioner wants to.
Yeah, just would remind, which is, Ms. Zook, that's a great point, and I would simply remind the board that just a few months ago, Vilonia School District came and asked, because they identified this as being a problem, so they created their early Wednesday dismissal and set their schedule around so they could have that PD opportunity embedded through the course of the year, not missing days, not requiring teachers to be absent out of the classroom, but redoing their schedule so that they knew every Wednesday there would be a time for that. And all the reports that we've been getting from that district have been, it's exceeded their expectations. So every time I talk to someone from Vilonia, they say, please tell the state board thank you for approving that. So there are districts that are out there looking for different ideas that fit, it's not a one-size-fits-all, but I certainly think there are opportunities for those types of scheduling adjustments, calendar adjustments that more districts are exploring, and just lay that out there for Mr. Poor, his team, and for any of the others that might be listening.
I'll just provide a little bit of a counter. I actually, like if we were to do an early dismissal in Little Rock, we would have huge challenges with that because of our parent groups. And if we try to do an early dismissal at the elementary level, then the impact of middle school and high school attendance. So it's pretty complex. I do totally agree with you. Obviously, PD is what moves us forward, but especially when you have schools that are struggling, you want to provide that, and there's everybody in the world that wants to come help provide it to you too. But we get inundated on requests to go to these PD efforts, whether it's from the State Department or from other entities that say we've got the solution. And in some cases, they really do have the solution, but you create another problem by the absentee rate.
Well, and I think the onus falls on the department or the different groups. Occasionally we have, the department has PD during the school year, or AEA has during the school year, or this group or that group during the school year. Well, as a teacher, the things I learn in the summer and have time to think on and plan on and apply my former knowledge to that, it makes me more effective by the time the semester starts. But something I learn on Tuesday is not really going to help me that much on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday because I haven't had time to sit down and percolate on it and talk with my peers and work it into the plan. So, this is my new soapbox. So, and I do appreciate the fact that the department is now showing the different, as far as attendance, between sick days versus PD days, because therein I was holding you all responsible for something over which you couldn't help. So that was very helpful to me this time, and I have a lot of other things, but I think you're good for today.
Great. So I think why don't you just stay there, Mr. Poor? Why don't we go around on Little Rock, and then we'll bring Ms. Warren up and see what questions folks have for her. Ms. Dean, anything? Ms. Reith?
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Wright.
And thank you so much, as you said, right? We're going through a process here of learning with these plans, and we really appreciate the effort that you put into yours. The one thing that I would be curious about, and you know the type of questions that I've asked over the years, how are things going with community engagement and family engagement? What's that looking like in this process? And I'd be kind of curious. It feels like we're going through kind of a quiet period here in regards to conversations around return of local control and what that might look like next, or maybe at least just on our end. Maybe our inboxes just aren't as full. I'd be kind of curious what you're hearing as you're talking with the community at this point. How is that connecting to what you're doing, which obviously is a lot of really excellent work on the academic level?
Well, I don't think it's ever far from anyone's mind, and at least in my own world, it comes up on a pretty frequent basis. I think that there's a genuine appreciation for things that the district is doing right now, whether it's within the academic environment or the facilities. And in some of those things, that's kind of calm things, just because, we've got I think some really good performance taking place in all these areas. But I mean, it's never far away, and it's an issue that is a part of our community to regain local control. Our next really, really significant community engagement push out will be related to facilities. And, we've got some things that are going to need to happen in the month of June, where we're going to have a push out to share what do we do now that we're going to move and open up Southwest High School. How do we backfill into McClellan? How do we backfill into Fair? What do we do to Hall, who loses 300 students that are Hispanic learners that are going to move back down into the south part of the district? What happens to change that high school attendance zone? What do you do for families that are up in the northwest sector too? Because we get that comment as well. So, everyone will be ready to engage in that. What we really look at is pushing out multiple options within each one of those sectors of high school populations to allow community input. Obviously, it's high school sectors, but it impacts the whole K-12 environment. So there'll be opportunities for people to share the positives, the negatives of the approaches, what are other things we need to think about. That will ultimately lend itself to a recommendation, and I see a more specific utilization plan coming forward before the end of next year. So with community engagement on topics like that, it will also re-engineer the conversation about local control again. So any once you go into that process, you all will hear about it again, is my prognosis.
Thank you. And if I might just ask a follow-up question. So beyond the broader community engagement on strategy, with especially the schools of focus here, right, the ones that are in this plan, what is family engagement, everyday family engagement looking like?
You know, we've done
is that a
something-
priority, or are there some things you're learning programs that you all are doing?
We've done some things that are, I think, really unique, and I'll just throw out two really quick. One is Henderson, because it's one of the schools that we're working on, has developed a family engagement opportunity where all of its feeder schools are coming up and they're talking about everything from, age level appropriateness in terms of, what we do to, support the parent in the home, as well as the transition, because that transition from elementary to middle school is pretty dramatic, and it's also where we lose families. So Henderson has really stepped out on that. We, last week, had a wonderful thing that was done through our title programs of parents as partners. Ms. Reith, you'll be glad to know that we had 5 second language families that were a part of that group. There was a total of about 45 parents that took part from all over the district. Most diverse group of men and women, because there were men that took part in this class as well, trying to improve their parenting skills through learning from each other as well as having a support from the district. We had a banker's wife that was a part of it. We had several of our assistant principals who were there as parents. And then we had some folks that were a part of it that are really challenged on day-to-day economics that were a part of it as well. So I'm really proud of that in terms of what's going on there. And then, the building levels, of course, with their push that you're always aware of what we try to do, I think that's been real solid again this year.
Thank you. Thank you. And just as Ms. Zook has her soapbox and her boxes, and I appreciate that, please know that, during this process, obviously, it's not just about what gets done during the school day. I know you know that, right? But it's about the whole community, and especially around the intricacies and history specifically for this community. So please know this will be something I'll be continuing to ask for my brief period left on the state board. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Reith. Ms. Cochran, anything?
I just want to make a quick comment about how much great research there is about the increase in attendance rates when the educators get out into the community and make home visits and visit the communities where the students live.
And to that effect, you all know that we do the community walks, and now some schools are doing them on their own without me, which I think is a compliment, and I think that's a good thing. So we try to do those once a month, and then the schools are doing them on their own as well.
Ms. Newton, anything?
Just a quick question. I know this is the time of the year when administrators start thinking about next year and staffing and changes and have you got any idea, because I know to make progress as far as turnaround, once you do training with your teachers, if they leave, then you have to start over again the next year, and it's kind of a never-ending cycle. Have you got any ideas on your stability of your staff as far as for next year yet, or ways to kind of keep that going?
Yes, ma'am. Several things. The commissioner will be receiving a special board packet in the very near future for a bonus for our staff, so that's being worked on. Second thing is that we're working with our teacher association to look at how to condense the steps within our salary schedule so that we can bump up the starting pay, so that will help us attract. So that's positive. Let me give you the challenge, because we got to be real. The challenge is that we're going to face probably about a $5 million reduction. Now, $5 million sounds certainly a lot better than the $11 million last year, but remember, we've already cut $41 million out of our budget over the last 4 years. and now an additional 5. Where did the 5 million, where does that come from that we need to do the $5 million budget reduction? One is that we lost students. We have 400 less students, more or less, that we're serving this year than the previous year. Second is that we also are losing NSLA funding because we dropped below the 70% mark on free and reduced lunch. Now, that ought to make you just say, how is that possible in Little Rock School District? Well, it's a 4-year trend of that number dropping. I don't think it represents the population of our community. What it represents is the challenge of many of the people that receive those type of benefits, or all families, because we're doing it school-wide, they just think, hey, this is done, we're all set to go, and they don't complete the paperwork. So we're not the only district, is my understanding, that this has happened before, but it's a quick win to get $3 million back if we can change that around for next year to get us back over the 70% threshold, which should occur. So we've got to tighten our staffing, which means that there will be, certainly some teachers. When you lose 400 students, you're going to cut back on teaching staff, but we also will be making some reductions in terms of our administration, and that will play out over the next several months.
It's good to hear from you. We haven't in a while, and it's nice to hear the progress that's occurred. So that we are responsibly prepared, when is the timing of the facilities discussion, so that as we anticipate what questions that will bring back to us, we're prepared for that?
We should do that right as the school year ends in June, and we'll do that throughout the summer months of going into different places to create those community forums.
You've already done a great job of speaking to specific questions. The thing I was sitting here thinking about is, well, maybe what are the questions we should have asked? Is there anything else something else that's gone really well, or something that's particularly challenged that hasn't surfaced in our questions or the report that'd be good for us to hear?
Well, I feel as one individual, as the superintendent, that I feel like we've got a much more collaborative environment. Collaborative environment first with just in our staff working together to do things, a greater collaboration with the department. We have a greater collaboration with our kids. We're using kids' voices more and more to help be in the rooms, to help engage and say, here's what we think, here's what needs to happen. And then, of course, the business community has jumped in a pretty significant way to support us. This week we had a meeting with Southwest Power Pool. I didn't even know what Southwest Power Pool was. That was 4 months ago, and now they're ready to engage with us in terms of STEM activities. They even said themselves they didn't want to be known. They wanted to be off the grid, which is kind of a funny term with them. But they're now all in to try to help us. So that's a significant partnership that's moving forward. We're still moving forward on the middle school project-based learning with Ford, Arkansas, and the Clinton graduates. And so that's just on the edge of going. Our programs for Career Tech, which was another target that the commissioner gave me coming in, they're increasing and enhancing in numbers in really significant ways. If you look at where we're at, one of the things that the commissioner and I talk about with his staff and then with my staff is a challenge that I think we still are working with is that sometimes the Little Rock employees don't necessarily trust everything that the department says and does. Sometimes the department doesn't trust everything the Little Rock School District does. And so it's really great to have a think partner like the commissioner that we talk those things out. We're just real about it. And we try to work through it, so when something comes up that does seem a little haywire, we try to go to work. But it kind of fits in even into like what I said earlier about the report, that it's kind of a new game right now. But it's a really exciting time. I can tell you it's been going to I've been to, I think, 4 staff meetings this week, and then elementary principals this morning and saying, go on to the ESSA website and show them what that looks like. Show them where you're at right now, because it's going to motivate folks, in my mind, to drive forward with their current plan, and it also is going to make them see some low-hanging fruit that they can attack and improve on. And I don't even know if I'm breaking the rule on that, but I guess I don't care. Let's see if the commissioner, I may get in trouble with him, but it's all supposed to, but this is the exact thing we need to do, is show these kind of things, to use it as mechanisms to kind of tighten what we're doing. I hope that answered your question.
No, sometimes we just don't know the questions we maybe should have asked, so thank you. Anything new happening in dialogue with charters in the district?
Well, a couple things that sometimes people don't realize is, one is that we are working with the charter schools on the Bright Futures. So we actually have a member of a charter school principal that sits on that, and Bright Futures is available to every child in the Little Rock community, that if there is a need that comes up that's going to inhibit someone's learning because of something that's happened away from the school environment, they can present that issue to our group, which is tied the city, that's tied to Goodwill and the school district, and we're going to go in 24 hours solve the problem for that student. We've solved problems with fires. We've had multiple families that have had fires. We had a situation where in our Career Tech program, we had the need for steel-toed boots for our construction kids because they couldn't afford it. We got that need solved within 24 hours from 2 donors.
Thank you. Last question. Is there anything that you need from us right now that you're not getting?
Well, every day in our district, there's just some wonderful, amazing things go on, and then there can always be that one negative thing, like the screenshot that many of you have seen on the food service. And just trying to help everyone stay balanced, to say, hold on, check in with the school. Are we beating ourselves down unnecessarily? Is there something that, is this really that big of an issue? It is a big issue to serve kids great meals, don't get me wrong. But is there a way that can get conveyed, or is it better just to blow it all up? I don't know. So I don't know how you all can help me on that, but social media-wise, we all have our own voice that we can share about accentuating the positives. The other thing that I know that related to reading and related, I just going to throw out dyslexia is another issue that I often hear community members and bring up, and I want to be transparent about that. We had really some subpar, poor numbers on the state report that we provide. This was a little more than 2 years ago. We've doubled that number. We're a work in progress. We're getting better and better at it. And I just want you to know that as you see those things, if you encounter a parent or community member, please direct them to us so that we can address their students' needs to the very best we can.
Thanks, Ms. Chambers. All right. Okay. Final question I have is on the Community Advisory Board. I know obviously an experiment over the last few years in terms of the movement back to local control. Could you talk a little bit about kind of your perceptions of how the CAB is functioning and what lessons you think there are to be learned for us as we kind of move forward with models like that?
Well, first, I think we really did the training in an excellent fashion to establish the appropriate level of governance and awareness for what these people need to do in terms of their responsibilities. That was a partnership between the School Board Association, the Department of Education, and the Little Rock School District. And so the training that took place was much richer, much deeper than what a typical school board member gets, when sometimes they almost get thrown into the frying pan. So that sequence of almost like a 2 or 3 month stretch, and then subsequent trainings from that point forward, I think were of big value. That actually, in my mind, and I don't know if the commission would agree, that's kind of written into the statute and kind of an expectation. I don't know about other communities, but I know that we really did that well, working together to prepare our folks. We have had 3 losses on the Community Advisory Board over this 1.5-year span. We now have 2 openings. So we have, that's a challenge, because then it kind of puts a burden on the rest of the Community Advisory Board to do the employee hearings, because now you're down to, literally 5 people, and if you're razor thin on trying to make sure you can have a group of 4 there. The other thing that this group has done by design, again, working with the commissioners, that we're trying to kind of build up their responsibilities. So that started to happen over the last year, so that now, besides the employee hearings, which was by statute, besides the looking at the schools that are in, at that time, academic distress. Now they are totally engaged in all the policy work. They are also engaged in receiving reports on our facility and planning, and they also are involved in trying to look at a little bit bigger picture of the instructional program. So they're receiving things on, what we're doing with literacy. They're receiving reports on this next month on our gifted and talented programs. So, we've just kind of gradually built it. That's, I think, a good way to go, but oftentimes school board folks, especially if there's a dramatic turnover, you don't get to do that. But it's a wonderful model in terms of helping, especially if you go into a situation where, as a group, you'd have to take over another district. That's really been a smart way to go.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Hook?
Yes. From all accounts, Forest Heights STEM has been a very successful program. People staying in the district, which we want them to do, instead of bailing at the 5th grade. I was wondering, as you look at your different high school configurations and the population and everything, would it be worth considering, particularly since it's a school of innovation, to think in terms of Hall, and I'm thinking STEM to career and STEM to college. So because I think we do STEM thinking college, but I'm not sure we do on the things that you would need that information, but you maybe not going to use whatever you major in college or go to college at all. But I know I'm real familiar with the Southwest Power Pool, and those kinds of people could be of help. And I don't know what all is involved. I can't recall at this point how many months it took to get that, but that might be, we could keep those Forest Heights kids and attract others as you redesign. Is this something that you are thinking about, or?
I think you just gave me a softball, so if I don't hit it out, then you need to come back and get on me later. But here's how I look at that. First off, we have a new principal at Hall. This is one of the 3 schools. So the climate in that school has dramatically changed. The business of school is going on, but there's a culture of care and a culture of inclusion. They had their first Cinco de Mayo celebration in the fall. That's not happened in the past. They had homecoming. Okay, you may think, homecoming? They didn't have dances before. They didn't have a parade before. It always got canceled. So they are doing things that are geared towards, it's a kids. We've got to have kids be happy and be included. But they also are doing school. And so it's a whole different environment. So what bridge that then creates is 2 different bridges for Hall. One is the bridge down to Forest Heights. So next year, the principal at Forest Heights STEM, along with the principal at Hall, are working on it, offering high school credits for the 8th graders so that they come up and take the class at Hall. And what that will do, in my mind, is it's going to be a benefit, obviously, to the 8th grade student, because they're getting their needs met academically. It makes the parent all of a sudden say, whoa, Hall is a really good place. On the other end of it, Dr. Roberts and staff, Mr. Burton, are working to create the connections out into the career strands so that we get more involved within the medical community. That's really been their target, has been more the medical community. But the Southwest Power Pool could be a connection because Forest Heights STEM has already have a little bit of a partnership with them.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Commissioner?
Yeah, Dr. Barth, let me just speak to one of your questions about the Community Advisory Board, and Mr. Poore talked about the 2 vacancies. So I know there's, in the last couple of weeks, there have been reports on that. I think Cynthia had addressed it in one of her stories. It's been on social media. We get calls from folks that say, hey, we know somebody has applied, but I just want to make sure that it's clear that the application is online, and we check regularly that we have not received any late. I think the last application we received was from last summer. So if folks are interested, they need to make sure that they are completing that application and submitting, and if there are any questions or if they're running into any difficulties with that online system, they need to let us know. I think some folks have assumed that they've applied, and we're not seeing the actual record of that application coming into the system. So, and that's for you, Mr. Poore, too. Just if you get any calls on that, or if your board members get calls on that, you can know, just have them call Michelle in our office, and she's the one that's taking care of all that. So we can guide them through it if it's a technology issue or anything like that, but that's the system we have set up to accept those applications.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Report. I'm glad we had a little extra time today to have a very good report, so thank you very much, and we will give Ms. Warren the same opportunity. I don't know if you I don't know if you want to make any brief opening comments, but I think some of the questions have probably applied to you as well, but we'll go back around after your opening comments.
Well, good morning, all.
Good morning.
Very happy to be here. Always nervous, I must admit. Always nervous, but I guess maybe I'll take that opportunity to share, thinking about elementary school. Very excited about our new principal. And just like Dr. Poore was saying, the climate has just shifted. And she's working hard, but her team's working hard too. And it's if we have kind of morphed into a group who's decided, number one, I've always wanted to work hard and I needed a good focus, and they're working, or others who are like, okay, they're not going to let me not work hard. So we are doing some great things. And as Dr. Hernandez mentioned, we wanted James Matthews to actually get in the process of the reporting piece. So it wasn't required, but we wanted them to benefit. And I do have some things to say about the 45-day plan report, progress report on our progress monitoring. It's challenging. It's challenging. However, we've actually found it to be a benefit for us as we, one, need to capture that information. But what was difficult was feeling like we had the flexibility to adjust the data sets. You have a goal and you want to gather data tied directly to that. So what's happened, I think, for us, and by the way, one size doesn't fit all. What happens for us here in Dalloway is going to be very different because the needs are really different from other schools such as Little Rock. But for us, the 45-day progress report, we're using it as a conversation. I mean, it's just where we reflect and it's where we're talking. And we literally, it's a Google Doc, we comment and talk back and forth, and we're just having conversations about teaching and learning. And trying to have that conversation as close to the teacher as possible. So it's not just the building leadership who's a part of that conversation in respect to the building principal, the AP, or what have you, but the instructional facilitators and any of the SILT members. I mean, everybody can have access. You know, even over the snow days, we were literally all just commenting and sending questions and resolving different things in there. So one of the things that I would say about the 45-day progress report, if it's not a flexible tool, then it's a problem. But I found greater collaboration around that tool within our district and more flexibility with the department to allow us to let that tool do what we needed to do. There's still a lot of work around it, but it's been a benefit to us. Some things at the elementary school that we see what you see. I mean, you see the data. Pre-K, the very, very foundation, we have a pre-K program, of course. We have an infants and toddlers classroom, and then we have 4 other classrooms that serve primarily 4-year-olds, but we have some 3-year-olds as well. And we recognize that it's got to happen there. So we have a new curriculum there, big day, pre-K, big day. And we have been very strategic. They are involved, and in the past they were not, but they're involved in their professional learning community conversations and those collaborations, and those happen directly with the principal, and they're talking about what should happen to prepare children. As a matter of fact, let's look back at the data. Where were your babies that you handed to kindergarten? And let's talk about how that should have looked or how it could have looked. So they're having those conversations, and that planning has become a lot more rich. James Matthews is a RISE school, and our focus on reading has definitely increased and improved. When we talk about professional development, it does take a lot of professional development. It really, really does. And professional learning is a benefit. So looking forward to there not being, of course, those days in the future, but they were very necessary for us. However, there were several. But we're a RISE school, and Mr. Key is going to be getting a report from me very soon that we'd be happy to share in respect to that collaborative effort with the cooperative, and of course the work within our building. We're having common conversations around data, and you may have seen those in pieces of that conversation in our 45-day progress report. But we've simplified a lot of things. When you have the types of staffing challenges that we have, it means that sometimes you are building capacity just to see some of those people not be with you in the future. However, we're still investing. We're still investing in them because that's a culture piece too. When I think you can and I teach you and I help you, then that promotes you want to stay around and do the work with us. But what we're finding as we talk about data that a lot of people really don't know how, beyond saying, okay, this is what the data said or this is what it means, it's hard for some of our teachers to make instructional decisions behind that. So we've simplified it, and I think you saw it. Here's what, so what, now what?
I love that.
And as we, it's made a
Really
very,
did. That was so helpful.
yes, it's made a big difference. I'd be remiss not to mention Ms. Dee Davis, our new school improvement specialist, and she's actually here with me today. But as we collaborate and brainstorm and talking about how to make it simple, you know, that was a big piece that she brought to the team, and we all embraced it. So we're having that kind of conversation, but it's not, again, an isolated conversation with just a few of the leaders in buildings. Everybody's engaged in it. And as we talk about, again, data and trying to make certain that we move that work closer to the teachers, we're modeling things. We had a district leadership team meeting on yesterday, and that, of course, all the instructional facilitators, the principals, and the district leaders. And we're making certain that we're having job-embedded professional development within our DILT meetings. And we're modeling pieces, giving them all the tools, asking them to help us develop them, and we're expecting them to do the very same things in their school improvement leadership team meetings. And then we're modeling for what we expect to see in PLCs. We spend a lot of time away from our buildings for professional learning, but we're trying to increase the time that we use in our PLCs and through our school activities to embed the learning. But our learning curve on data, that's improved a great deal. I'll comment that, and it's an example of not just that principle, but as we move into communicating our goals and our efforts. You've probably heard me talk about our mission statement, our abbreviated mission statement, to collaborate, to educate, and to graduate the whole child. And we're teaching that to our entire learning community. And we're talking and having great conversations around it. Increasing family engagement is huge, 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 huge. And social media has helped a great deal. I mean, you can let social media do you, or you can do social media. And we've made decisions, hey, let's get out there and get the word out. So we're using social media platforms. The elementary principal, she's sending out a remind text every day with an attachment. Just reminding you and just helping you see and sending out tips and don't forget to do this and thank you so much for everything. And they talk about the feedback. I mean, a like or a heart and you get X number of those, that tells you a whole lot. And they're making certain that those opportunities for parents, because cell phones are important to people, that those opportunities to connect are right there at their fingertips. So we're just trying to promote a Dollarway family that feels like they have a voice throughout. I mentioned several things about the rich conversations, and then the modeling, the reporting. I want to say a little bit about attendance. As it came up, you know, you can't teach if you're not there. And it was actually pretty eloquent, Ms. Zook, I can't say it again, but how you said what they miss out on when teachers aren't there, I mean, is far greater a deficit than what the teacher goes to get. So we do have to balance that, and we're working on that. As a matter of fact, we're in the planning stages of our Cardinal Academy. And Cardinal Academy will really be a big term that we'll use for professional learning in general. But some of that's going to happen with our teachers, teacher to teacher, you know, doing some training, some professional development, and of course some summer work. And we're going to try to do everything we can. What is it that what teachers need to know and be able to do to implement the programming for next year? And we're going to spend a lot of time with that. But we have that. we have that issue, of course, Dr. Poor kind of alluded to. You can beef up in one area, but it takes away from something else. And when you have teachers come in and spend most of their summer, they want to be paid. And so some of them give up part-time jobs and have to make a lot of adjustments. So it also, you know, has some funding concerns tied to it, but we're going to make that happen, and we're going to make that work. As we think about attendance, though, large majority of our teachers are away because they're ill or they're in professional learning opportunities. And just a note, flu is real. We had 90 babies absent on yesterday from James Matthews, and 7 teachers, and a couple of the teachers have had the flu twice. Now, we, of course, are doing all the things everybody's doing, maintenance, bus drivers, wiping down everything, disinfecting, everything you can think of. Everybody's carrying around their own little wipes, their Lysol, all that stuff. But sometimes our babies come, and they had a fever, a high fever, even before they got to school. So I think you understand all that and the challenges that come with that. But we're working on it because we have a phenomenal health services program. As it relates to family engagement, I think you've heard even from other reports in the past about the Dalloway Community Schools Initiative that has really been good to help to empower our community. We're working to get a liaison that would be a community person to work with that group and to connect back with us. It really needs a lot more attention in respect to someone actually working that and making that work. So we're in those steps working with Rural Community Alliance in that respect. Our Dalloway Foundation that is new to us this year, but it is a group of mostly alumni actually, but anybody can be a part of persons who are just trying to provide field trip opportunities, teacher grants, and they're really, they've gotten their legs under them now, and they're moving, you know, forward in that. But Dalloway, because we got so much going on and so much that we need to do, we need the hands to help. And those are a couple of entities that are doing that. I'm on the Education Alliance for Go Forward Pine Bluff. Some of you may have heard about that. And as they ask us how to help, I did offer that something, in addition to other things, of course, we need support with. But one of the things was community, helping to engage the community in a way that provides professional learning for them about schools, about governing schools, and about helping to lead schools. And so that's something that they are going to take up. And we have had Living the Mission sessions where in Alzheimer and Wabaseka, we literally had sessions there just to talk to the community about how do we live this mission of collaborating, educating, and graduating the whole child, and what have you to say about that. And then we had one, of course, in Pine Bluff, because you might have heard that phrase, across the river, Alzheimer, Wabaseka, we have got to connect and pull everybody together. So we have had sessions in both places, but we've given them the feedback. As a matter of fact, we use our annual report to the public as an opportunity. You said some things to us, so here's what we're doing, and here's the feedback we promised you, and we're moving forward. And I think I'm talking a lot. Let me be quiet for a minute, let you ask me some questions.
Thank you, Ms. Warren.
Kind of excited.
Right.
Sorry,
Great
thank you.
message. Yes, sir.
Does anyone think Mr. Poor would need to be coming back?
Yep.
If it's okay, may we allow him to excuse himself? All right,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poor. So I'll start with Ms. Cochran. Do you have anything for Ms. Warren? Ms. Newton?
Just a couple of questions, and you touched on it briefly. On the Forward and the Rural Community Alliance, are you getting positive support that's actually helping, or do you need more support from them, or?
We are getting very positive support, especially from Jerry and her group. What we have had is people who've been consistently from the community there, however, some who have not. So you may have a meeting every month, but oftentimes you'll have a different group and some commitments have been made that I feel everybody is going to participate some way, but we really needed someone to help guide that work and kind of be attentive to it in the community. And that's where we're going. So we've been having sessions and say, hey, let's reflect. We're not really as far along as we'd like to be. Some good things are happening. We feel good about it. It's great to have this voice, but let's make certain that we're doing what we need to. So that was the next step that actually in the next couple of weeks should be resolved. We needed a community liaison, and we're finalizing that piece.
Okay. On the ESSA School Index, are you finding the information that you're seeing from that? Is it giving you any insights on some things that maybe you need to try to change or do differently?
Oh, yes, ma'am. A lot of insight. Had maybe even a couple of teary moments there. However, yes, on yesterday, Dr. Hernandez came at my request to talk to my district improvement leadership team, just to kind of highlight some things and talk with us about the report. Again, when we talk about data, what do you do next now that you know this? But it's almost confusing in some respects. I mean, so you're reading, and so what we've been able to do, and the webinars have been good. The department, I think, offered really, really good support. But sometimes you need to just have a conversation, and you and your people talk about it, and you get your questions answered. So we're really at the beginning stages of the work, but that support was really, really helpful yesterday from Dr. Hernandez. And there are some things, for instance, data integrity. So there's a particular field related to computer science, and it's like 0. Well, we know that we have students enrolled in computer science courses. So we're looking back in the business rules and trying to see, did something strange happen, or were we thinking some of these courses counted that didn't, or was there a shift or a change or something crazy? So honestly, we may not have even known that there was a challenge, and we weren't getting credit for that, at least at this point in time. We wouldn't have known that without actually that report. So yes, it's very beneficial, and we are seeing some things that, like Dr. Poore said, maybe some low-hanging fruit that we can do something about right now. Clean up the data integrity, because graduation rate, we really feel like that's an error, but again, it's a data integrity piece. So clean up some of that mess, but we still have some heavy lifting to do academically still. But some promising, positive things in there as well. As you may have seen, our babies come to school. Our babies come to school. We have some other really good things that we can glean from that, but it bears to question if they're coming, then of course it means with the numbers we have that core instruction is a concern, and we need to make certain we're doing the right things with them when they're there. So we're still at the start of the work, but we're digging in, and it has revealed some alarming and even some positive things even now already.
Okay. I guess my last question has to do with your staff, and you mentioned this a little bit, that staffing is challenging. And we've been able to see that through the reports that come through that we get on ALPs and long-term subs. But I know you've probably already started looking at your staff for next year. Are you trying to do any incentives to those teachers that you've already trained and kind of got on the right track? Are you trying to do anything to try to keep them and retain those teachers?
Yes. Some things are a little unorthodox in that you have to deal with where you are and just pick up from there. So it may look that you have all these long-term subs, but when you dig a little deeper, several of them had some connection to or had plans even to become licensed teachers. And so we are continuing to just help them, to support them, to the point that as some of them may have missed the test by just a couple of points, we've literally, Dee has done the literacy side, and another person that's a part of our staff now, who was a math specialist at one point, they've been doing tutoring sessions. I mean, we've literally tutored teachers to help and to provide support to them. We found that because we've had to, go the non-traditional route, a major challenge for many has been paying that money for Apple candidacy. It's a chunk of money, $1,400, $1,500 all at once. Well, if you're already not working, or if you are working and you got to pull away for a few weeks to go stay in the dorm to do a training, quality, phenomenal, wonderful. Some people just can't do that. So we actually did collaborate with the department and got permission to pay that for some teachers who now are provisionally, but who are certified now, and who had the credentials to be, had just a couple of steps. I mean, we're talking about coming from the workplace in, all those programs. Finances have just been a big barrier for some. So we literally, for about 7, actually, And there's, of course, an agreement and some things tied to it. But again, another kind of unorthodox piece. Staffing for us, though, and people don't want to admit it, but you got to pay people. You have to pay people to work. And I'm going to borrow the commissioner's term. We're working on right sizing our staff, of course, to meet the enrollment dip. And didn't dip as much this past year as it did the year before, but staffing to make certain that we are taking into consideration even the enrichment courses and even the additions to the curriculum that we like to have, but that we are sized accurately. And then we are working now on looking at how we will pay teachers better, how we will improve that, because we're competing with several districts. I mean, you get on 5:30, it doesn't take about 40 minutes to get here. So that's not really a hardship for many. But we have teachers and administrators even calling us every day, interestingly enough, who are really excited about what's going on. Our community has been so supportive, and so many positive things have been said. People want to come and work with us. But if you can go really, really right down the street, make $5,000 more, then you might have to do that because you may not be able to make that decision to say no to those monies. That is going to make a big difference, and we've worked to be good stewards, and the department is helping us to look at planning, but we must pay our teachers better, and that's gonna add a great deal as well.
Okay, good. I noticed there's some stirring over in the department side when you mentioned the Apple program. Is there something, Dr. Owe, that your group had, or that you maybe wanted to speak to that? I know that if Dollarway is having a challenge with the Apple, maybe that may be something statewide that we could look into. I don't know.
Good morning, Jeremy Owa, Educator Effectiveness. Yes, we were communicating because there are high need grants that the district could also use, but there's also some other opportunities after we have the licensure rules approved, that how we can actually help assist districts in these situations. And then more importantly, with our Teach Arkansas campaign, hopefully everyone saw it trending on social media last Friday. We are offering praxis prep sessions around the state. So we actually have partnered with ETS to provide praxis support. So for teacher candidates who have had historical issues or situations with not passing the assessment, now we're going to extend the opportunity to assist with them. But currently, and since long before I came to the department, Michael Rowland in the Educator Preparation Unit always provided resources for teacher candidates who needed additional resources for preparation for the praxis assessments. So those opportunities are available.
So I would encourage not just you at Dollarway, but any superintendents that are having problems with, licensure to contact the department, because they have a lot of resources that are available. So take advantage of it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Dr. Hill?
Just really appreciate your zeal and motivation to serve your students.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Ms. Shepard?
Just one quick question. It is good to hear from you, and we appreciate your opening comments talking about what's going on. I have a question. It may be tied to one of the ones that Ms. Newton just raised. In your opening comments, I think you were talking about the report and everyone getting used to working through the report. And I thought you made a comment relative to flexibility, and as long as it's flexible, that'll work, but if it's not, that'll be a problem. Could you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Sure. I'll say in the past, maybe the last couple of years, prior to really this solid year, we actually put ourselves in a box. So there may have been a little more opportunity for some flexibility there that we didn't really ask for. Kind of learned that may have been some of it, but we really had some hard, fast rules about the 45-day progress reports format. And I think that as we all learn about how really to help schools that have major challenges, at first there are just some good data sets, and at first there are just some timelines, and then we need certain data. As a matter of fact, you all need certain data. So there are timelines that tie to when you're going to need data, and timelines to when the department would need data to get you data, and then timelines on when we need data to get it to you, and so on and so forth. And even a timeline can be a challenge. So we did not have, I would say, the flexibility to say, this timeline actually doesn't work for us. That when it comes down to when we receive data, or when we actually, it'd be just better in the school's rhythm, we need this. And so we've actually had that opportunity to do that now. And while, again, it would seem like not that big a deal, even the timing for when we are to get information in, if it is a couple of weeks before an assessment, before the interim assessment, if it's, so I don't have better data at that point. But to say you have a goal and you're to report to it, but the fields for your progress report are static, then it doesn't really give you the flexibility, and you end up doing two types of work. The work to fill in this, and then the work of progress monitoring your newly established goals. So there is flexibility there. And I had Dr. Hernandez repeat it yesterday when he was talking to us about that. And he spoke to us actually making certain that the data sets that we are pulling or accessing, that it meets the goals and that we have the flexibility to do that. And I don't mean just willy-nilly, because you have to continue to report on certain data sets to get trend data. So not that strangeness. But I said to him, say that again. Because, like I say, it's a box that we have, a really, really small box that we could actually get up and walk out of. But because some things did feel oppressive in the past, we didn't feel comfortable doing that. And so I actually, because I have more connections in some respects with the department, I've tried to share that message, but it's helped when the departments come in and said the same thing. So those types of challenges.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Black?
Just a little curious.
Yes, sir.
When do you think you all will be free from academic distress?
I don't know. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know. If you were to say, when do I expect to see growth? I could do a little better job. Even than that, it couldn't be a promise. But, sir, I really cannot say. I do expect that things that we're putting in place will grow exponentially. But for us, when you have an entire school of children who are, let's say, behind, if I could generalize it, and even when they grow, and even when they grow multiple years, they still don't meet a proficiency threshold, then I could present to you data that says, oh, we're improving, they're increasing, and we're making growth of multiple years in many numbers and even in many sub-pops. But I really wouldn't be able to hand you data that says our children are on target or meeting proficiency, because it would take a percentage of our children being proficient to get off. So sorry, it's a bad answer, I'm sorry, but I really don't know, sir, I'm sorry.
I just recommend to you that you set a date. It'll help you in planning and organizing. And you set that date, and that's your target. And if you miss it, that's okay. You set another date. But you need a date when the kids look forward to this and when you look forward to this. And what's your next steps after that?
I received that.
Yeah, maybe I can help with a little bit of that too, because, under the past mechanism for academic distress, the things that were in place prior to Act 930, prior to Every Student Succeeds Act, it was all steeped in the No Child Left Behind, which did have those hard and fast deadlines. If you didn't meet AYP, you were on a list. If you didn't, achieve these certain levels of proficiency. And what we realized now, while it is important to set dates, not just for a grand end date, but for those points along the way. those checkpoints, which through our ESSA plan, we helped establish some of those. What we are really trying to foster in districts like Dollarway, and I think they are well on their way, is that continuous improvement cycle, constant inquiry of we have to get better, and how do we get better? Okay, now we've gotten better. We're not where we need to be, but how do we learn from what we've done? How do we pull in more resources, more knowledge to be able, and that's where Dr. Hernandez and the Office of Coordinated Support and Service really is in a better place to help districts like Dollarway than what the department had organized before, which was the compliance, which was in great deal of the compliance. So and there is still a date out there. I mean, the statutory date of limitation of 5 years is still there. Certainly, I could say that the work that they have done, and you look at some of the documents that they've submitted, I mean, Mrs. Warren's team has grown.
Growing, yes.
They have grown on the fiscal. Mr. Johnson, the growth that we've seen from him on the finance side has been unbelievable. And Cindy and her team have been great to help them. And I see growth on the academic side of things too. And Ms. Warren is doing a good job of getting the right people in place. And that's a process. So not to say, Mr. Black, that we're not looking for a timeline. We want it to be as soon as possible, but I would just say that what we are seeing is the growth that's happening with their team is going to start seeing accelerated results with the students, and we're pretty excited about the path they're on.
I just want to say one additional statement. This is not the first time you all have been in academic distress.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
May not even be the second time. You get in distress, take the necessary steps, you eventually get out of distress, and then you go back into distress again. And it's a never-ending cycle. I truly recommend to you that when you get out this time, you stay out.
I actually would challenge the statement that Dollarway got out of distress.
Okay. But they got back in it.
But I'm saying they didn't get out of it.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I definitely understand. And, you know, that one size doesn't fit all. There's going to be a unique remedy for Dollarway and building capacity. But as much as I am working as well as I can with the Arkansas Department of Education, I don't want to be on the list. And but I also realize the benefit that Dollarway is receiving right now and how needful the additional supports are. And I'm happy that when we're not on the list, those supports will still be in place. But sir, we actually were still in distress even when our names came off the list, and that really made the issues a lot deeper and harder to get out of. But I do understand exactly what you're saying.
Mr. Black, I'm so glad you said that, because you can't be more right in what you pointed out, and I think Ms. Warren is right on it. That's where the failing of that number that we had established as that point of academic distress, because the goal then was, let's do what we can to get above that number, to get off the list. It wasn't, how do we fix the underlying situations that led us to this point? And that's the exercise, that's what they are engaged in now. So you are so right, and that is, we learned from that as a department. We learned what we did or didn't do, and we're trying to fix that now in the way we support districts like Dollarway, like Little Rock, like the others that are out there. So, you know, because there's the responsibility is on us to make sure we do better than we did before. So, yes, sir, you're right on target.
And I just want to say that the distress list kind of repeats itself. It's the same schools every time. It has to stop now.
Thank you. This, actually, my question was, does relate to this transition from the old system to Act 930. The takeover now is at 2 years, 3 months, I believe. And under the new system, at what point and how does a community advisory board come into being, or some other
Yeah, that's a good-
formalized system that would begin to start to
Right.
look like a governed school district?
And that's a great question. So because the takeover action for Dollarway was actually twofold. One was academic and the other was fiscal. I can't remember which order was which, but
Academic and then fiscal.
okay, so first was academic and then we came back in fiscal. So under Act 930, and that's where in 2019 session, we're going to have to go back and align these, because we only changed that methodology in Act 930, which is the academic side under the new accountability system. But the law is still in place for fiscal distress that says in the second, I think it says in the second full year following the takeover. So we're at a point now, and Mrs. Warren has started having that conversation about what does a community advisory board look like? How would we set that up? So those conversations are taking place, and we'll be giving you an update on that soon.
Great.
That was along the same lines as I was talking, because I know in the past, and you weren't there, so I'll say this, it would seem to me from the emails and phone calls that I get that a lot of the problem was the leadership and the board were not working well together, and so the kids sort of got lost in the mix. And so from what Mr. Poor was saying, having training, helping a board, whether it be a community advisory or an elected school board, realize what their role is and what their role isn't, and working like that. And then in response to what Mr. Black was saying, I think the goal at this point is to continue to progress, but also move from needing the most support to the one right above that. So that would put a picture as far as, we're still not where we want to be, but we have made improvements and we've stepped from a 5 to a 4 as far as the need of support. So just those two comments on that, so that we can help you, the Dollarway District and the children there, have a community advisory board that is well trained and understanding what their role is, so they don't take a lot of your time, which needs to be spent leading.
Great. Misty?
Let me first commend you on the work that you're doing, and the task that is before you. Because if we put things in perspective, we see and we realize that this is a symptom of something that is a very old issue and problem, a systemic problem that we've had, not just nationally, but internationally, that has affected certain communities in an extremely detrimental way. And these communities have a long way to dig out of. And I think it's necessary for us to remember and to focus on where we've come from and how far we've come and how far we have to go, from hundreds of years of being behind, and how far we have to go. There is a lot that needs to be done, and it's not just on the community level. It's so much more than that. So I just want to keep our perspective. I also want to just encourage you because in my opinion, this is something that is going to take, it's not just going to take the community pulling themselves up by the bootstraps. It's so much more than that. It's going to take, of course, community level, which the community is made of families. The family is the fabric of the community. So it goes back to what my soapbox is, I guess you would say, is that family engagement. I would encourage you to look more to your families, and you're doing the work. You're doing the work for as far as family and community engagement. As you mentioned before, bringing in those parents, giving them what I say PD opportunities, because it's going to be it's got to be a culture change. It's got to be a culture shift. And in my opinion, it's going to take divine intervention. So my suggestion, I don't know if you've already been doing this, is lean to your faith communities. Lean on your faith-based organizations and seek as much help as you can there. There's so much good work that's being done through faith-based communities. You have some phenomenal pastors and leaders in Pine Bluff and Whitehall areas. But just continue the work, stay strong, and be encouraged. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Ms. Warren. I'm sorry, the camera is always placed right there, so I'm looking around it. But thank you. I have to express how grateful I am to know that I'm getting this opportunity to speak with you again, because I remember when we asked you to take on this challenge, and just being so impressed with you from even that very first day, and your energy and your enthusiasm. I have to admit, today you feel a little, I don't know, lower in energy, and stating that you're nervous, and so I did want to maybe take a cue from my colleague, Ms. Chambers, which is always wonderful and us grounding in the person. But I just kind of wanted to see how you're feeling in this moment, and then also ask how your community is feeling. I had a chance to be in Pine Bluff yesterday. I'll talk about that here in a second. But first, I wanted to start off. How are you feeling? How's your community feeling about this?
I'll start with the community.
Yeah.
We're getting some wonderful feedback from our community. There've been some negative feedback about the numbers of persons who will come to community activities, but I think the right people were there. And interestingly enough, one of our city councilmen said, you know, my parents didn't come to this kind of stuff, but they made certain that I did what I needed to do, and so on and so forth. We are getting very positive feedback, and we have data to support that. They are embracing us, and they're having higher expectations, I feel. So instead of all of our engagements being tied to a whole bunch of negativity, you don't share an idea with someone that you don't think is capable of carrying it out. Mm-hmm. And so we're getting thoughts and ideas and recommendations and suggestions. So I would say that while the community wants more for us, I believe that they believe more in our ability to deliver. As it relates to me, I was trying to calm down a little bit because I can be a little over the top sometimes, I think. But I'm still super excited, still really excited. And having this connection, Ms. Dean, someone that I've read quite a bit about said, I would have fainted if I had not believed that in my day I'd see good things. And so I say to you that as I think about that, I would faint if I did not believe that Dalloway is going to improve. And but I'm not having a fainting spell because I truly believe it. I truly believe it. I've not ever been in a situation, because I do feel I've been called to this, but I've never been in a situation that didn't improve. And so I expect that. I said to someone, and I'm probably opening a can of worms, so I'm still going to say it. You asked about charters a little earlier, and so I don't have anything to say about that per se, except this. I tell people that it's not my job to deal with any of that. Our job, and my job specifically, is to make Dalloway a school district of choice. And interestingly enough, it's becoming that. People want their children to be nurtured, and they want their children to be held on to. And that's something we do with Dollar Way. We hold on to children. We hold on to them. They're, we get that dump of students around testing time sometimes, but we hold on to them. We keep them. We nurture. We take care of them. We do everything that you can think of. And that goes a long, long way. Our graduates go on and do some very productive, positive, wonderful things. And so I say to you, we know we have those challenges, but I'm doing well. I'm doing fine. I'm still, again, very honored. I feel really blessed to have this opportunity, and I'm doing a good job. Just thought I'd tell you that too.
Yes, ma'am. No, exactly as she said, and we're seeing that. And so, and so connecting now, well, thank you for that, and I'm glad to know, and please know you never have to dial it down with us. Your energy is infectious, and when you do it, it actually helps us believe as well, and we're definitely, I think all of us, from that affirmation standpoint, right? You got to believe you can win. Otherwise, what are we even doing this for, right? But I did have the opportunity yesterday to be in Pine Bluff, and as you were sharing, and as a broader community, feeling some energy around the leadership with the schools, but also economic development. And so I'm glad to see the go forward, and even, and I have to say, it's trickling it down to all members of the community. I had a chance to work with members of the immigrant community that were like, well, we know construction. Can we turn around these houses in downtown Pine Bluff and make them available to the community? What role can we play in terms of helping connect with this, and us starting to think through that? And so I want to say, even your newest members of your community are taking note and trying to think about how they can help as well. But I also, while I was there, had a chance to meet with a group of high school young women, right? A group of women that are getting ready to graduate, right, seniors. And I know that this was Pine Bluff High School and not Dollarway, but it's a shared community, and so I thought maybe there was some insights there that might be helpful with you. But I asked them what were their thoughts on their education, right? What needs that they have? Were there any things they'd like to see better? And it was interesting you mentioned the graduation rates, because that was something they centered in on as well. It feels like, and maybe it's because they're near the end of their career, but feeling that maybe, by no necessarily any intentionality, but that kids may have been passed through in the high school that maybe did not complete or get passing grades, and were not made aware until too late about needing to recuperate certain classes. And it felt like that there was a lot of miscommunication around graduation requirements and how that related to their own trajectory, and that these conversations weren't happening until pretty close to the end, right? And again, so for you to mention graduation rate, I just wanted to share that that was something I know teachers in the Pine Bluff High School were looking into, and something that had come up, but that the students themselves were concerned about whether their own classmates would get to graduate, right? And it was wonderful seeing these women say to me, make higher education affordable. Go tell our governor, make higher education affordable, because I want to go to school and I don't want to be in debt my whole life, and I want to continue. So graduation, you could tell, was a high premium for them and moving on, and I thought that that was exciting. So. But I wanted to offer that up. And then the other thing I had asked them, they're like, well, Miss Mireya, we really want to see better schools, classrooms, the actual facilities themselves. And there was this deep feeling that right next to them, Whitehall was getting everything good, that they get the taxes, they get the money, they get the beautiful schools, and that they really felt, and tied to their identities as African-American young women. They were all African-American young women in this specific club that I was speaking with, and they just really felt that they were just getting the worst half, that maybe things had not improved there, that even being able to visually see right next to them a community, right, that seemed to just have some better things, right? It was a reiteration for them every single day going into the classroom, that maybe they were different, that they were less expectations were for them or hopes for them. And so I just offer that up. I know that some parents from the community down there have come up here, and referenced this tax issue to us before, and if I recall correctly, Commissioner, you had said it was a local issue around that, and so, and I appreciate that. But just to say, I think the community would like some more information in that process. Definitely, if there's an opportunity here to look at resources and equity, that these young women, and it just amazed me, high school women informed on things like that, and wanting to inform, but that that as much as we focus on the academics, right, we know facilities matter. Facilities matter, the area around them matters. And so as these conversations go on, one young lady there aspired with her mother to work with the mayor of Pine Bluff to create a community center, because they were, and saw the community center in Whitehall, and they're like, that's not fair, Whitehall has a community center. And I guess at first, folks from their community, they felt like they weren't welcome there, but they want their own, and they want to help lead their own wraparound services and create a safe space. So the message the youth asked me to bring to this meeting was they want to be part of the solution. They're ready, they see it, they see the challenges, but they also know that they have a role there. And if there's opportunities, as you're looking, as Ms. Dean had talked about, family, community engagement, student voice in this process, and that they're part of the solution, that it's not just all for them without them. But I think that some of them stand ready to share that same infectious energy you have, right? And see what's possible with the community. And so my final comment, or maybe just offer, you know, I think one of the big takeaways I had from last year was our visit down in Little Rock to some of our high schools, right? And our schools, and the invitation from the superintendent there during a really critical moment. If there's an opportunity for us to help bear witness, so it's not always of the negative, but maybe the positive, or to accompany part of a process. You know, I think that that's something we can do specifically as a state board. Obviously, I can't speak for all my colleagues or our chair or the commissioner, but if there's something where even in our own physical presence, even if it's not collectively as a board, but as individuals, that help the Dollarway community know that we're not just here from a takeover standpoint and to mandate, but that we're also here to accompany and empower and highlight some of the success that you are doing. I encourage you to please think about how we can play a role in helping you, whether it's that or you may have some other ideas. Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate that very much.
All right. If there are no other comments or questions, appreciate you so much taking time this morning. And so before us is this item. Dr. Fernandez, did you have any closing comments?
Just some clarification on the report. So obviously this feels a little different. You know, we did move to this quarterly, putting all the progress reports in with that. But I, you know, there was a lot of other rich conversation that we're not able to capture in reports. So if this is something that, you know, kind of a check-in where we're making sure the superintendents are here and able to ask questions in addition to the report, you know, we'll do that in May. Of course, we'll be adding Earl to the mix. And the other part is just, you know, what you heard here today is that we're really, it feels different in the sense of, you know, we're really not so involved with the schools, that we're really trying to build capacity with the districts and the district leadership team, where they are having those rich conversations. And I was part of one yesterday with Dollarway, where they're having discussions about what do we do? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? How are we going to progress monitor? And those progress reports won't be in terms, and I told Mr. Poore this yesterday, I said, take the Department of Education off of that thing, put Little Rock on there, make it your own. And I've told these people too, but we've got to make sure that they're not just doing things right, meaning whatever we tell them to do, but they're doing the right things for them and crafting something that is meaningful and will help them show improvement down the road. And then when we do pull out Mr. Black, is that they have that capacity at the district level to continue that work within their district and not have to come back in that distress part. So that's the goal. It's that getting there, and how it feels much different than it has before. And are we doing not enough? And so those are the kind of things. But as far as the report, are we okay with the structure? And
Yeah, I think, yeah, my sense would be, I mean, obviously we probably won't have the freedom to have as fulsome a conversation as we did today, That said, especially because it would be Earl's first report, I think it probably makes sense to put these on the action agenda for May. Way folks kind of know to expect that we're going to have as an item, because I think, as indicated today, this board cares deeply about progress in these districts. Does that sound all right?
Great.
Okay.
Reports day, I mean,
No, well, I think it needs to be on the action agenda. So I would invite a motion to accept these two reports.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Wright, second by Ms. Chambers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Thank you all very, very much. Safe travels back. Because of kind of some unexpected issues this afternoon, without objection, we're going to need to do some shifting around of the agenda. And most importantly, we're going to need to pop down and grab the rules governing educator licensure and try to get those done now, because Dr. Owa is going to have to be away unexpectedly this afternoon. And so if there's not objection, if we can move to that item. Hearing none, that would be, so we're on action agenda B, item 1, and it is actually two parts. It would be the rules governing educator licensure, the permanent rules, and then also the emergency rules that we placed on the agenda this afternoon. And Dr. Owa obviously central to this work, so I'll turn it over to Ms. Freno.
Thank you, Dr. Barth. As you said, we're going to be talking about the permanent rules and the emergency rules at the same time. Both sets of rules are identical, with the exception, of course, the emergency rules have emergency language at the end. These rules have gone through 2 public comment periods. We've of course had 2 public comment hearings. There were changes made, substantive changes after the first public comment period. That's why we went into the second. After the second public comment period, changes were made, but they were non-substantive. They have been approved by the governor's office to be issued as both emergency rules, and also we're seeking today your approval of the final rules for permanent promulgation. And probably it would, certainly, there are folks here to answer any questions you all might have, but it would probably be a good idea to vote individually on the emergency rules and the permanent rules for permanent promulgation.
Great, thank you. But we can do the discussion together since they are identical. So I'll just start over. Ms. Cochran, do you have any questions or comments about the final rules? Ms. Newton?
Ms. Smith, I know there were several parts in the rules that Learning Services is working on, as far as demonstrating for the tiers and demonstrating for the reading proficiency. Y'all were working on, am I wrong?
Jeremy Owa, Educator Effectiveness. The Educator Continuum with the tiers, our division is assisting with that, as well as the a standalone reading assessment in accordance to Act 416. The Act 1063 is the proficiency requirement that Mrs. Smith's division is working on. So are you?
But both parts of it, I just wanted to know the progress, where were we at as far as making specifics for teachers, what the requirements were going to be for demonstrating competency for the tiers, demonstrating competency for the reading, just kind of where we were. That's what my question was.
So Stacey Smith, Learning Services. So we still have a group who is working on the prescribed pathways. It's not been finalized yet. We have pretty much the plan in place for awareness and demonstrating awareness. So that piece is being made by AETN. On the prescribed pathways, we're looking at it doing it in 2 phases. Phase 1, documenting the how they've received their training or their knowledge, and the second part's the demonstration piece. So we have a group of people talking about, do we need to have principals going through some type of professional development training to be able to determine when a teacher has demonstrated proficiency at their school, and documenting that by the teacher has attended trainings and then has put these skills into place in their classroom. So we're still in the process of working on that.
Okay. Do you have an idea of maybe a timeline of what you're shooting for as far as completion?
So we're hoping to have something by this summer to be able to come out so that in the fall of next year, people know exactly what they're working towards.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hill? Ms. Chambers, anything? Mr. Williamson? Ms. Fleck? Okay. All right. Then I would invite a motion to approve the permanent rules first.
Move to approve the permanent rules. Second.
All right. Motion by Ms. Dean, second by Ms. Zook. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, great. And now we move to a separate motion on the emergency rules.
I move that we approve the emergency rules.
Okay, motion by Mr. Black, second by Ms. Reith. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And I just want to voice on behalf of the board how much work these very complex rules were, and we're so appreciative of y'all's working with us to give us a sense that we had a deep understanding of them, and so I appreciate everybody at the department for that. So thank y'all very much, and this is good work. So, and I think it provides some. We know they're not perfect. We know we will return to this issue again and again and again, but I do think it gives some really new, tangible pathways for changing the teaching profession in Arkansas in a really positive way. So I'm very appreciative of that.
Thank you, Chair Barth. And I just wanted to mention that how much we appreciate the feedback, the ongoing feedback that we received from you all and our stakeholders. They were very beneficial to us with the work, and we look forward to ongoing communication with you all and our stakeholders of our advisory groups. So thank you.
Super. Thank you. All right. Now we're going to go back up to in the action agenda to the waivers, the Act 1240 waivers, and we're going to actually change the order there a little bit as well, because a couple of those waivers do relate to teacher issues, and if there are any questions that arise, it'd be great if we were sure Dr. O was here. So what we will do is we will do the Hot Springs waiver first, then the Guy Perkins, and then we'll go back to Emerson Taylor. So that's the order we're going to use. So I'll turn it over for a reminder of our process here.
Good morning, Kelly McLaughlin, ADE. This morning we are going to begin with Hot Springs School District.
Yes.
Okay, this is Action A1B. Act 1240 of 2015 allows the school district to petition the State Board of Education for all or some of the waivers granted to open enrollment public charter schools that serve students who reside in their school district. Representatives of the Hot Springs School District are appearing before the board with a petition for waivers for principal licensure, teacher licensure, and library media. Their 90 days expires on February 28th, and they are requesting 2 years for the principal licensure and library media, and 4 years for the teacher licensure. Just to remind you of the procedures, the school district will have 20 minutes to make their presentation, and if there is any opposition here, they will have that same amount, and then the school district can have 5 minutes for a response. Okay.
All right. And we have Dr. Naos here. And if you would mind raising your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. You have up to 20 minutes. Don't feel free to use less than that if you so wish.
I don't expect to need 20 minutes. Thank you. Dr. Stephanie Nahus, Superintendent, Hot Springs School District. I'm excited to be here today. It's very exciting times in Hot Springs School District as we passed a millage increase in September of 2016, which has led to this moment where I come to you and ask for some waivers allowed by Act 1240. I gotta get used to having this clicker. Our current reality is that we have 4 elementary school campuses. 3 of them contain pre-K. All go to 4th grade. We have an intermediate school campus that is grades 5, 6. We have a junior high school campus, a district conversion charter school, Hot Springs Junior Academy, that opened this fall. That's grades 7, 8. And then we have our district conversion charter school, Hot Springs World Class High School, which serves grades 9, 12. Presently, these 7 schools reside on 6 campuses.
as our Park International Baccalaureate Magnet Elementary shares the same building as our intermediate school campus. And what we have looked at over the time frame and what we promised our voters in the millage is that we are a high poverty school district, and the research shows that if we can limit the transitions of our students and we can build stronger, longer relationships, that's going to ultimately impact our student achievement for the better. And so you can see we do a lot of transitioning right now in our current reality. We have elementary, then we go to an intermediate, then we go to a junior high, then we go to a high school campus. And so what we are ready to do beginning in 2020 when our building projects end is to transition to 4 elementary campuses, all pre-K through 6th grade, 1 junior high serving 7 through 9, and 1 high school serving 10 through 12. Our goal is to minimize our transitions and maximize the efficient use of our district resources. Our personnel, our transportation are 2 key areas that we're trying to really maximize, as we do share a lot of staff between our buildings. We do have 2 major building projects in process. We are building a new Langston Elementary Magnet School on the same site as the current one. And then we are awaiting the ADE facilities approval to bid out a new junior academy building, which will actually be housed on the same campus as our high school. And so we are looking forward to shifting to 4 campuses, with 2 of those being what we are calling super campuses. We'll have a standalone brand new Langston building, a standalone Gardner, which will become Oaklawn, STEM magnet, and then we will have our Park building and our Oaklawn Elementary side by side, because Oaklawn will shift to our current middle school, and then our high school and our junior academy will be side by side. And so we're really excited about this possibility, and again, that focus of limiting our transitions. Our students will really be able to be at an elementary school, pre-K through 6, build those strong relationships, and then when they transition, they're going to transition to our junior high, high school campus. And so, we'll eliminate the multiple transitions to where they really only have 1 major transition for our students. And so that is going to require us to begin a plan. When we originally started, we thought, well, we'll just start this transition plan in 2020 when all of our buildings are completed and all the shifts are made in our district. But the more we talked about that, we thought, if we're really doing this to impact student achievement, why would we wait? Why would we not go ahead and start this transition now so that in 2020 we're fully shifted to pre-K 6 buildings and we're providing that best education that we can for our students? And so our plan is that beginning in 2018-19, with your approval today, that all 4 of our elementaries will become pre-K or K-5 buildings in e-school on paper with the Department of Ed. Our grade 5 will continue to be housed at our intermediate school, but we will have actually 4 elementary teams in that building. And so our Langston students will be together in a team, our Oaklawn students will be together in a team, our Park students will be together, and our Gardner students will be together. And then our intermediate school will transition to only grade 6. The following year, we'll continue that, and we'll have all 4 elementaries. We'll add grade 6. Langston will open in the fall of 2019, fully pre-K 6 in that brand new building. Grades 5 and 6 will continue to be housed at our current intermediate school for the other 3 elementaries at that time. We'll dissolve Hot Springs Intermediate School as an LEA. We'll continue to function. I'm kind of calling it as an annex. Our intermediate school will kind of become elementary annexes for the next 2 years. In order to be able to do this, I come before you today asking for some 1240 waivers, because what's going to happen is we have an opportunity. We knew this was coming, and so as staff changes have happened, I'm trying to be most efficient. And so the current building principal of Hot Springs Intermediate School has been selected to become my associate superintendent next year and serve human resources, curriculum, professional development, to take some of those responsibilities that I've kept over the time. And so instead of replacing that principal position
and then having an additional administrative position that we don't need in 2 years. What I would like to do is to make our current park principal the building principal of that Park Elementary and the annex building, intermediate school. And so that will require a waiver because I'll need one principal to oversee 2 buildings. We are hiring a second assistant principal. We currently have an assistant principal. We'll hire a second assistant principal. So there will be 3 administrators serving the students in that building. And there's approximately 750 students in that building. The park principal will oversee, and intermediate school principal for the 2 years, oversee all of the functioning. The 2 assistant principals will service the intermediate school and do the observations and be there for the day-to-day with the assistance of the principal. The other waiver that I need is licensure. Obviously, with an intermediate school, I have a lot of teachers that are certified 4-8. A lot of those are certified in only 2 subject areas. They might just be social studies and language arts. They might just be math and science. And so what we've done is we pulled all of our intermediate school teachers and we surveyed them to see what they wanted to do as we transitioned, what buildings they wanted to go to, what were their strengths, what were their weaknesses. And so we have actually shared with them where they're going to be, because we want them to start doing professional development with those elementary schools. We want them to start becoming a member of those elementary campuses. And we also want them to connect with those principals, because those principals will be coming over and checking in on those teachers and those students as we do this transition. And so doing that, we're going to need some flexibility for just a few years. We're asking for this waiver for 4 years because I not only need it for the next 2 years as we start transitioning and some of them start teaching 5th grade, what we call self-contained, all subject areas where they've not been doing that in the past. But I want to give them an additional 2 years just in case they need to go back and do any necessary schooling or any furthering PD to handle those licensure needs. I did talk with Dr. Owa. Because I do know with the new licensure rules, there are some flexibilities in there, but it's possible that I need one of those teachers to teach 2nd grade and teach all subjects in 2nd grade over these next few years. And then the final one is media services, and again, I'm only asking for that for 2 years along with the principal licensure, because we will have one library media specialist that will be servicing 2 buildings. We do have a full-time classified paraprofessional in that library to assist with that area. That's all I have.
All right, great. I'll start. Mr. Black, any questions? Mr. Williamson? Ms. Chambers, any questions?
So your teachers...
Excuse me, before you do, I assume there is no opposition on this, Ms. Boyd? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Ms. Chambers.
So, not speaking specifically to opposition, but how did the teachers feel about it? Are they excited about this? They're concerned about this? What's their perspective?
We have some excited and we have some nervous. But they've been very open, and we've worked really hard on transparency. And so sharing the whys, they understand this is best for kids. And so we've had some real, very strong open dialogue about what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. And we really tried to place everybody in their first choice. Now, obviously, that wasn't possible, but if they didn't get their first, they got their second, unless they said all their choices were to move to the Hot Springs Junior Academy. And knowing that, as we have openings there, we're going to give them the first opportunity to go ahead and transfer to those positions. So really, the teacher feedback has been positive. Like I said, we've got them nervous to have to teach all 4 subject areas when they haven't done that in several years, and many of them never. But we're providing them supports, and we're going to start with that PD, hitting it hard in June.
Great. Thanks. Dr. Hill, Ms. Newton?
On behalf of teachers, I appreciate that your focus is making sure that you provide them support, and so I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Ms. Cochran?
It just seems like so well organized, this plan, and I'm sure your teachers do appreciate that. Just thinking about those students who are going to have teachers with some gaps in their knowledge, how connected are they within their own school community and within the larger professional learning community?
The teachers?
Yes.
Very connected, and actually the district is really, I believe the game changer is professional learning communities. And so we're putting all of our professional development efforts with Solution Tree in that PLC process. We have one school that applied for the pilot last year and did not get accepted. They're applying again this year, and we've got another school applying as well. And we're bringing Solution Tree in, and we're sending teachers to the Rogers Institute this summer from across the district, 55 teachers to be exact. So they are tied in. We are growing that. Really excited about growing that. But all of our 5th grade teachers, we met with our leadership team on Monday, and we're making a plan for them to go to those buildings and go sit in on 4th grade classrooms and see how a classroom runs when you're teaching all 4 subject areas. And so we're putting all of those pieces in place because we do know how critical that is.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Wright, okay.
And I guess picking back off Ms. Cochran's comments, well, first and foremost, it's obvious a lot of work has gone into this. So I have to applaud you and your leadership. And I'm so grateful you were able to bring your community along in this process with the millage, because we know that that is not an easy feat this day and age. So congratulations and hats off to you on that. I think my concern, and it's both from a teaching perspective but also the student perspective, is just special needs kids during this time. I know you have a growing English language learner population, special eds. I mean, what is that going to look like during this transition and supports?
Those supports won't change. We have an amazing ESOL district coordinator, and amazing ESOL facilitators in our district, and so they will continue to work with the students in those school buildings, and then in the annex location as well, and same with special education. You know, that's something that we're very proud of. We actually have students who school choice to us because of the special education services we provide, and nothing will change with that. We will continue with those high level of services. The staff that currently serve intermediate school will be placed wherever those high needs are in our district to be most efficient.
Thank you.
Steve? You sure?
This looks like a great plan, and I'm glad that you were able to get the millage passed, because when the millage passes, there's a lot of stuff that you can do. So that's
All right. Great. I will invite a motion. Are folks comfortable doing these as a all together? Okay, rather than breaking them up. Then I will invite a motion on the full package of 3 different waiver areas.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Zook, second by Ms. Reith. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Right. Congratulations. Thank you for
all.
being here. All right. Okay. All right, we are going to go ahead and try to finish the waivers since folks have been waiting today. Our second up is Guy Perkins.
That will be action item 1AC, or I'm sorry, action item 1C. Today we have representatives from the Guy Perkins School District. They are asking for class size and teaching load. Their 90 days expires on April the 11th, and they are requesting for 2 years. And we have Superintendent Shade Gilbert here that you'll want to swear in.
All right, great. Welcome, Mr. Gilbert, and I'd ask you to raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You have up to 20 minutes, so please proceed.
Dr. Barth, I don't think mine's going to take that long. Ours is fairly straightforward. When I came on board July the 1st, our district was on fiscal distress. In looking at staffing loads with my principal and I, we knew that our first grade was very close in numbers, and we made the decision, because of the fiscal distress, to try it with one teacher, as many small school superintendents do. As Providence would have it, most of our new enrollees have been in first grade. And so because of that, it came to a head after Christmas. We had a student move in that would put us over. We also had a student that had petitioned for a legal transfer to come to our district, a special needs young man. And I don't know if any of you know anything about the Guy community, but our motto is the small town with a big heart.
And because of that, our board agreed to take him as well, which is fine. We're proud to have the young man. And, but we thought we'd be remiss if we did not ask for a waiver. We have since gone to work in our community, and we found a retired teacher from our district that is K-6 certified. She is serving as a long-term sub, so we've taken care of most of the load, and there will not be class size overages. The necessity of the waiver will come in the art and the music, because the focus of our music is classroom in nature, not choir and band for large group instruction, and then the art. We do not have a certified art teacher. We do have one alternative that we could place those children with some kindergarten students. We see an advantage to keeping them with their same age peers. With that, the reason we've asked for the 4-6 waiver is we have another class there that's close as well. We thought if we were asking for it, we might as well.
Ms. Hook, any questions?
Great community with a big heart and a wonderful coach.
For a short time, he's about to retire.
I know, y'all got a lot of good publicity for him.
Yes,
Tell him
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
congratulations. No, I have no questions. I think it's a good plan. How experienced are the teachers that will have the extra?
The K1, we're doing a 1-2 split, excuse me, I misspoke. The lady that is in the 1-2 split class is a retired teacher with a K-6 certification. The first grade teacher is very experienced. Second grade teacher is on her second year. So we wanted to limit those class size.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Ms. Deep? Okay. Ms. Wright?
Just wanting to double check, assuming it's the case, I know it's a small community, but that these teachers that are involved in this, they've been consulted and are aware that you're here asking for this?
Yes, ma'am. They actually came into my office, and we had a nice conversation. I wanted to explain what we were doing, also explain the plan that this was a safety measure. I mean, we did not want to keep them with larger class size because, as anyone knows, we do believe that, class size plays a huge role in student achievement. But as superintendent, I felt it was my role to try to protect the district as well. So we wanted to make sure that we're not opening ourselves up to probationary violation.
But these teachers don't have concerns. They feel they can handle this extra.
They do, in fact, and they're proud since we've been able to. And the art and music teachers fine. I've consulted with both of them as well. So, and these are actually the two that will affect, and they're fine. My art teacher's a go-getter. She feels the more the merrier.
Thank you.
Right. Ms. Cochran?
You do have a teacher cadet program, right? In your
We are in the process of applying for the waiver and, the startup grant. I misspoke. And we are planning on starting it next year.
I would love to come help you recruit students for that
I
program.
would love for you to.
Grow your program and your teachers.
But yes, ma'am, we are in the process of getting that started. We've applied through Lori Mitchell with Archbold Co-op and getting the process started.
Thank you. Ms. Newton, anything?
Is this district, is this waiver for district-wide, or is it just for elementary?
Well, that's one and the same with my district. I have one elementary school.
Would it apply if you had a need at high school? I guess that's what my question.
No, ma'am, this would just be for the elementary school.
Okay. For those places that you are going to be over, is there going to be a para available for those teachers?
We have moved some NSA/federal funds. We're about to take a para to the board. Our board meeting is the 20th.
So there will be one available?
Yes, ma'am. We have already interviewed that person. I've gone through the second interviews 2 days ago. We think we have the right qualified person, 8 hours of college, comes from a long line of teachers. She just didn't become one. She became an LPN.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great. Dr. Hill? Ms. Chambers? All right. Then I would invite a waiver for this, invite a motion for this 2-year waiver for Guy Perkins.
Move to approve for 2 years.
All right. Motion by Ms. Newton, second by Ms. Wright. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Congratulations. Safe travels. All right. And we're going to get through this final waiver, and then before we break for lunch, we return to an issue we know well. And Ms. McLaughlin, thank you.
Okay, this is action item A1A, and we do have representatives from the Emerson Taylor Bradley School District. They are here seeking waivers for flexible schedule on the allowable first day of school. Their 90 days expires on February 11th, and they are requesting for 5 years. And we do have Superintendent Gary Hines here to make his presentation.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Hines. If you would raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, you may proceed for up to 20 minutes.
It'd be closer to 2.
Okay.
Y'all are familiar with this subject, so I won't bore you with all the details. We want to start school approximately a week earlier than what current law allows. We want to get in more days of instruction prior to the ACT Aspire testing, as well as equalize our semesters. First semester and second semester will be equal in days. Both will be 89, which will make better equity, especially in our half-credit courses at the secondary level. So that's our request.
And it's for 5 years. Just a question, why the length of that request?
Basically, each day or each year, the number of days moves up. This year, we started it on August the 14th. In 5 years, we'll be back about to that same time. So, next year it'll probably be instead of the 13th, it'll be the 14th, and the 15th it'll move. The waiver does not allow us to start any earlier than the 13th.
All right, great. Thank you. Any questions on this request? Ms. Newton?
Just curious why you didn't come with your co-op when that came?
My board meeting fell on a day that I couldn't have my board meeting and the public meeting prior to the co-op really to submit there on behalf of everyone else.
I appreciate you waiting and making sure your board and community was on board. So thank you.
All right, good deal. I'll invite a motion. Ms. Newton?
Move to approve.
Thank you. All right, motion by Ms. Newton, second by Ms. Dean. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you very much. Safe travels. And we will pick up, we will return at 1 p.m., and we're going to pick up with the civics exam piece, so we're pretty much back on track. So I will see y'all then.
Requirement that all high school students seeking a diploma or an equivalency diploma must pass the civics naturalization test with a score of at least 60%. So this requirement begins in the 18-19 school year for students graduating. So that's our current juniors. Okay. So moving forward, I'm going to refer to this assessment as the Arkansas Civics Exam. The legislation required that the state board would actually help determine the method and manner in which this will go forward into schools. So we are suggesting or proposing an online exam. It's on the Moodle platform. It's multiple choice. It has ease of use, and it has immediate data report that many of our students are already familiar with throughout the state. Those schools that use Virtual Arkansas, that is the platform that they use. As far as digital platforms, Blackboard, those students are very familiar with those. So it's fairly easy to use. On the multiple choice portion of this assessment, the test itself is not necessarily multiple choice. There's some that are fill in the blank. There's some that are select several options. We did have conversation with folks who were supporting the legislation and those who were lobbying for the legislation to determine if multiple choice assessment would be appropriate, and they gave us the okay that it was. So I want to kind of show you what we've created as far as this assessment and how it would be used in our classrooms and schools. So this is what the landing page looks like for the Arkansas Civics exams. Students would log in. Each school would have a point person who is responsible for uploading the test in their school and designating the different classes and students who would be taking the exam. Once students log into the assessment, they actually have an introductory video on there that actually goes through the instructions, exactly what they're supposed to do. Again, this is multiple choice. It's very easy to navigate. The assessment has 100 questions, and our department took the 100 questions and we looked at the civics naturalization test, and it was already naturally broke up into 9 sections. And so we followed those same 9 sections throughout the assessment. All right, so schools have the flexibility of when a student starts the exam, they can either go through all 100 questions at one time, they can do a section at a time, they could do 5 questions and stop and then come back in and log back in at another time. Okay, so there's flexibility as far as the speed in which they take the exam. Again, the test is set up into sections, so it's very clear when you move from one section to another. Okay, so this is the second section here, Systems of Government. Gives you another introduction to what that section is about. You can see on this section there's actually 35 questions that's considered to be under this section. The first section, I believe, had 12. So again, it's a multiple choice exam. Students will see a question, will have the opportunity to answer from a choice. If they get the answer correct, it immediately tells them that their answer was correct. Okay? If they answer a question and they answer the question wrong, it sends them to a detour. Okay? And in that detour, it tells them what they chose and what was wrong, but then it immediately puts them into kind of a remediation or a teach. It gives you an article, it gives you a video, it gives you something about that context that you just were answering. So you have a detour. And then after the students go through the detour, it allows them to go back to the question and have another chance at the question. If they get it right, it's right. If they miss it the second time, it's count. Okay, so we built it into the system. Again, here's another example of what a detour would look like. This one actually has a diagram. Again, giving you support for the question that you just missed. The test, again, is an online exam. What we want to tell schools is this is not the ACT Aspire. This is not the ACT. This is an exam, and we want you to treat it as such. Any accommodations that you would provide to students in your classrooms for any other exam that you give, we would expect you to do the same here. If you normally pull a group of students in your classroom back to the table to give an oral exam, then we would expect you to do the same thing here. If you normally eliminate answers, or if there's something that you normally do in a routine basis for an exam in your class, in either IEP, 504, LPAC committees with English languages, we expect the same thing. Okay? Again, it's immediate scoring. Students know if they've made the 60% or if they didn't. If they make it all the way through and they didn't make the 60%, well, you get to take it again. Okay, so it's not a one and you're done. Okay, we expect every student that once they start the portal and they're in it for that semester, we expect all students to be able to pass the assessment within that semester with the appropriate support from their schools. Any teacher can administer the exam. So the rollout of this. Students and schools, I don't know so much students, but schools, they're wanting this now. And a lot of schools wanted to roll out paper copies and move forward with the assessment. And we felt like it was important to build this online platform piece because it did give the ease of being able to tell immediately when a student passed the assessment. It wasn't putting that back on the teacher. It also had the availability for schools to be able to upload their student data. And we've worked closely with research and technology to make sure that it can get uploaded and put into Tri-End, that the student has passed the assessment, the exam, for a graduation requirement. So if you have a kid who moves from one district to another, it'll follow them. So what we're proposing for 2017-18, that's this school year, any district who wants to go ahead and start this year may, once we release it, if they are currently enrolled in civics this school year, so if they took it, they had it in the fall, or if they're currently enrolled in it this spring, that they could be one to go ahead and take the assessment this year, or any current junior, because that's the class that has to have it for a graduation requirement. And then for next year, again, any student that's enrolled in civics that school year, and then any junior or senior who has not met the requirement for graduation. Okay? Because we've built it on an online portal, we do have a cost per student, and this was the most efficient way as far as to roll out and being able to control who's getting into the system for this first and second year. And so, because I have a microphone, I get to brag on my people for a second. Hope Allen, David Nance, I got to give David Nance lots of credit, Sherry Baird, Maggie Herrick, Research and Technology, and the team Digital, working with us to make this a usable. So I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Ms. Cochran?
My only concern is for those juniors and sophomores and the ninth graders who may have had civics in the fall. Just that time that has elapsed since they had that instruction, and the how the teachers may have to just ditch the curriculum in the class that they're currently in to be able to help them pass that test. Are there any provisions that are going to be made?
So it's a great question and great concern. It's something that we've expressed ourselves. First off, we went back and we aligned the standards to the different questions on the assessment. And these standards are not specific to the civics class in high school. Okay, these standards go over multiple years, multiple times. This test is not a secret. Exactly what's on the assessment. The answers are clearly, this is what it is. So will students have to take some time to probably study, to look at, to refresh? Yes. Will schools have to make a plan to how are we going to meet our juniors right now? You know, are they going to do that in a specific classroom? I think there are some things that we can do that won't be so intrusive, but in no way do we want this to become the civics class or curriculum in our high schools. Okay, but that was a good concern. And I think that's why we're hearing from so many schools that they want to start now with their juniors so that there's time.
Ms. Newton?
You answered one of my questions. Was there multiple forms of the test? So there's just one form of the test and everybody gets the same test?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And just to compliment you, from a teacher viewpoint, I love the idea that you've got the remediation built in, that this is not going to take more time for the teachers. You know, when they miss that particular question, they're going to get some instruction right then, and that's going to be great. I know the teacher's going to love that. I had one more question and I just went blank. So, oh, is it timed? Is this a time test?
It is not a time test. So there are 100 questions, and it was kind of estimated that if a student were to sit down and just take the assessment, that it could take them about an hour. Okay, but again, that depends on if they know the information or not. We had one person who went through and took it, and it took them about 30 minutes. But they knew most of the answers. They didn't have to go through a lot of the remediation, or when they were going through, they were able to quickly pull out the information they needed and move on. So I think it's going to depend on the student.
All right. Thank you. Very good.
Dr. Hill?
I just want to commend you. I like the detour once they get off the road to get them back on the road.
That's right.
Chambers? Ms. Smith won't be surprised to have some comments. And first off, I want to reiterate my appreciation for how thoughtfully everyone on your team worked on this. You know, and it is law, and I recognize it, and I think you all have adapted most as elegantly as possible to it. You know, I just, as somebody who obviously does civics every day and teaches civics every day, I just have deep concerns about whether this is the way to do civics education. I think there unquestionably is a basic knowledge component, the understanding of civics, but there is also, you know, a component of civics that's really about deeper learning and thinking more critically about these mechanisms of democracy. And I fear very much that that while you rightly say the curriculum should not be altered in any way to link to this test, I fear very much that it will in certain districts, and in particular because it is a high-stakes test, because if a student fails to pass it, they will not graduate. And I think we know that number will be very small, but I fear that there will be an alteration of the curriculum in a way that really does focus on memorization of these basic facts rather than heightening critical thinking skills. And so I do think this is a really problematic direction. We know since No Child Left Behind came along, the civics education, the time devoted to civics education has been on the downward trajectory. We know because it's not a tested, historically not a tested subject, it doesn't get its fair airtime in my view, especially since I believe the reason we have a public education is first and foremost so that folks are prepared to engage in democracy. I think we have had some real challenges in this regard. I fear that this is not the right direction to go, but it is what it is. So, and I do appreciate the attention given to it. I have one very basic question. On the Moodle platform, do all the districts have access to the Moodle platform, or some districts?
Course in the class.
At no cost to the district?
No cost to the district.
Okay. Great.
And we also, because the requirement is for students who are seeking high school equivalency, we did work with adult ed as well. And adult ed will have their own kind of classroom setting. And so folks who are showing up there to take their assessment there will have the opportunity to take it as well.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Then the request from the department is for us to affirm this as the Arkansas Civics exam under Act 478.
Thank you.
Motion by Ms. Zook, second by Mr. Williamson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Great. Thank you, Ms. Smith. All right. We now skip down to item 3 for the afternoon. We have our last 2 items, actually. We have 2 items for public comment, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. Mary Claire Hyatt for the department. First on agenda item number 3, consideration for public comment on the ADE rules governing instructional materials. This was an amended rule due to Act 929 of 2017 to make it in compliance with the new legislation. It's been approved by the governor's office, and we request that the board approve it to be released for public comment. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions on the side? Ms. Newton?
Yeah, and this is not because of the rules. This is because of my lack of information of what came from 2014. I did not realize that if you look at 4.01.1, it says that we can require reports from districts on the use and distribution of materials. And then 5.02, they shall provide instructional materials. And then the method of compliance is the statement of assurance. I'm just a little bit concerned because I know Ms. Abels talked to me several times last year that she would go into districts and go into classrooms and they did not have basic instructional materials. And to me, if this has been in since 2014, then we've got a gap somewhere. There are classrooms where teachers don't have textbooks or they don't have whatever they need. And it looks like to me that we're in charge of, or we are tasked with making sure that happens. And so I'm not sure, you know, if we go back to the 2014 rule or use this rule, either one, that we're doing, that I'm doing my part, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I don't know what my question is, but I'm really concerned when I'm hearing that students are not providing materials that they need. And then this says that all that we're doing is someone is signing off that, yeah, they do. So I don't know who my question goes to or if there is a question.
I'm not either. Roy, is this something you can help with? Does your unit look at any of this? Or maybe Ms. Smith?
I'm not sure that'll help a whole lot. So our unit did, for a while, accept the contracts that were bids when you had the caravans back in the day that we went through. And so the legislation in 2014 allowed for school districts to start utilizing digital resources and not having to adopt a standard textbook. And so when that legislation, I believe, was repealed, that's where the caravans went away. Districts didn't have to provide hard copy textbooks or actually make a formal adoption as they had before. Kind of along those same timelines as well, that's when you saw the change in standards, moving from Arkansas to the Common Core, and you saw lots of caution about buying resources and materials because things were not aligned. And I think a lot of districts got off cycle, and I think that's some of the things that we've heard from teachers about, not keeping up with the materials, not staying on those regular years of materials to support. One thing we're trying to do is as we write new standards and bring them to the state board, we start talking to school districts about what they need to do to be able to provide the appropriate resources that are aligned to those standards, and trying to get districts to start thinking in terms of their budget in alignment with how standards are adopted.
I guess my question is there anything that we can do as a board that would make sure teachers are getting the materials that they need? It may not be a textbook, you know. Right. I realize things are changing and we're not textbook based, but you know, if you don't have anything to work with, it's really hard to bring students up. And so is there any way that we can do something besides?
If Royce, is he still up here? So if districts are stating that they have assurance statements that their districts do have the supplies and materials, if that's not the case, I mean, there may be something there, and that's where I'd have to defer to someone else.
Mr. Cosby can speak to the things they look for, you know, our standards folks that are in there looking, so maybe he can help with some of that. But I'll just say this: I know that in the foundation funding, there is a component in the matrix for instructional materials. So, you know, there's funding that goes out as part of the per ADM every year, and it's very loosely defined in the matrix what that can be used for. I mean, I should say there's a lot of flexibility there.
Sure.
So.
Roy Cosby, Standards for Accreditation. To go back in history when we used to do the 4-year cycle on-site visits, which we do not do anymore. That was one of the things that we looked at. We no longer do that. But if we are sent to a district and required to do an on-site visit, and that's one of the things we're required to review, we will do that. However, right now, each superintendent has to sign a statement of assurance that Mr. Key just talked about. And then if there's a complaint that comes in and then we're required to go out to a district review that, then indeed we would do that. That's kind of that's where we are with that right now.
I know that's something that we do, you know, for instance, one of the recent districts with Earl.
Yes.
And we sent the team in there, and those are things that they do look at specifically. And as we are, as we're working on the new way of doing this, this work, using a risk-based scenario of some of these visits, you know, districts that might need greater support are going to get a little bit more help, but they're also going to get a little bit more scrutiny as far as, you know, what are the materials you have there. So we are in that transition. We don't want it to look like we're not doing anything, because that's not the case, but it's not as rigid as it once was.
Yes, and when we visited with school districts, Dr. Hernandez's team, and now we're working on an equity lab situation, and I can see where some of that could come into play, reviewing those situations.
I just know that we heard it from multiple places that she visited last year, that they just did not have the materials in the classrooms that they needed, and that's just bothersome to me, so. Mm-hmm.
Are those coming to ADE, and should they be run by us so that we can see those? Or, you know, because I, like everyone else on this board, if that says it's my responsibility,
Well,
then
it's a may, it's not a,
I know, but when we south part of the state saying, you know, my kid doesn't have a science book or whatever, and then I'll say, well, maybe they're doing standards-based and, you know, la, la, la. But, and then we heard it a lot.
It does say may. Are we getting any kind of, because, I mean, y'all got a longer history than I do. Are we getting any kind of report on this?
I was surprised when I read this rule that component was in there. We have not gotten that report historically, right?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
In the recent
not
years.
Recent years, no.
But we do have that power under current law, if there was the way it's read. Now, I don't know what that.
Well, I think this is part of the overall academic, you know, in looking, you know, remembering the systems in that wheel and the student at the center. This is going to be part of your academic system. So, you know, that's something I can make sure Dr. Hernandez puts in their working conversations of, as part of your academic system, what are your instructional materials? How do you ensure they're up to date? How do you ensure you're on a right cycle? So that's definitely something that we can put a little more emphasis on.
I'm seeing Dr. Hernandez agreeing.
And also, on this, it said the state board through the department will include funding for instructional materials in the foundation funding. We don't do that. We don't do funding. Yeah, we don't have any money. That needs to be legislature. That doesn't need to be Wade and Newton.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. We could do some legal research on it, but, you know, there was a time, you know, if you go back and look at old state board minutes, there was a time where the state board reviewed budgets and, you know, did a lot more with respect to, but I don't think they had any authority, which is why they stopped looking at that, because after Lakeview and a lot of the changes that took place, you're right, this is probably one of those things that if you look at it and read it, it's not as precise as it should be when it comes to describing the relationship between the board, the department, and the money.
So is it ready to be sent out?
Ms. Height.
Well, that's certainly something that could be, I think, incorporated into the public comment period. So if it's received as a public comment, it could be considered as a public comment rather than holding up the public comment period.
Okay, but, yeah, I guess what it would be is substantive. If we take it out from, as far as the financial part, and say, no, that's the legislature, that would be a substantive change. But let's see what happens.
So let me make some, you're saying that if we pulled it now, made these types of corrections, and then brought it back versus proceeding with public comment, getting that in public comment, making substantive changes, and then you'd have to make send it back out again. Is that?
I don't know which would be the most expedient, but also the most accurate way to do it.
Well, it seems clear that some of these things may be rule-based, others may be statutory, and even though if it's some archaic statutes, right, that may need to be, may need to be altered in some way in the future. So I'm seeing Ms. Davis now. Oh.
No, but, so I don't know, Lori, if you had any thoughts you want to share on that.
Well, Ms. Zook, I don't see any reason why we can't pull it at this point and just bring it back to you next month. I mean, there's no burning need, and I think the point is really well taken, that it needs to be looked at in whole, and, you know, generally, we look at the whole rule in general, but we focus on where the change is. So I think it's probably a pretty good idea, because would that be a substantive change, or wouldn't it? I don't know. Probably, and you're right. Then we would just have to put it out for another public comment period. So maybe what we can do is we can go back, we can research, we can look at changing that, and then we can bring it back to the state board next month.
Yeah, because
if that's what the board wants.
Right. I think what we're saying is we don't want to shun our responsibility, but there's some things in here they say we're responsible for that we aren't.
I agree.
So I move that we pull this or table it, or what would the correct wording be?
Yeah. Ms. Reno, what is
I think at this point, the department may request that we just pull this item from the agenda.
The department requests that we pull this item from the agenda.
It is disappeared.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Ms. Hyatt, it was more complicated this time than your last.
One of these times, it's actually going to be my rule, and you guys are going to be blown away.
Good for you.
All right. Next up, we have the Braille and large print textbook rule.
Yes. So, again, for consideration for release of public comment, the department's rules to implement the Braille and large print textbook appropriation. The appropriation, was renewed in 2017. Really what we did with the rules was just we updated some of the language. So if you had a chance to review, some of the terminology was outdated. These rules hadn't been updated in quite some time. So it was more just bringing the language up to date.
Any questions? All right. I would invite a motion to release these rules for public comment.
So moved.
All right. Motion by second by Mr. Black. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Great. Thank you very much. Before we adjourn for the day, I know Mr. Williamson's not going to be able to be here tomorrow, and I think we need to probably get on the same page about what our schedule is going to be in the next month. I'll remind everyone that we have a work session at 8 a.m. here in this room tomorrow, and that is focused on the community service, always that phrase, community service learning, but there's another word in there that Credits. Yes, okay. The community service, that is part of the fifth indicator, and so is now becoming more prominent, and we have a lot of questions there. So Ms. Smith will give that lead that work session. So we'll then convene at 9 for our meeting tomorrow with reports. Not a lot of action on that agenda, but we will be here for a little while in the morning. Next month, remember it's March 7th and 8th. On the 7th, we will, the plan is to go to El Dorado. And so you will look to hear from probably Kalisha in terms of what the travel plans will be from Little Rock for that. And so she's going to work with Mr. Williamson on that agenda for that day. We will then return to Central Arkansas that evening, and we will plan to meet on Thursday, in all likelihood with a work session at 8 a.m. Focused on Act 930. We think we're going to be ready for action starting at 10 a.m. on the 8th. We'll in this room, in this place, we'll finish our action and probably just a minimal number of reports that just have to get done next month. On Thursday, we do not meet that Friday. Okay, so that's the plan, just so that everybody's clear on schedules. But we'll get more details on travel issues to and from El Dorado in the coming couple of weeks. Any questions?
Does that work?
Yes.
Just another announcement.
Yeah, works great. And we appreciate you working on that, Mr. Weeks.
No, thank you. Oh, if I could ask a scheduling question, I feel like, Ms. Hollis, that we're still going to have our Family and Community Engagement Task Force meeting. I can't remember if we said that Friday. I know we flagged it. Or that we said maybe we would do it at that dinner that Thursday. Do you remember offhand? Okay. 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 Okay.
And we'll be able to do that at the department, at ADE, correct?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
it's a
so
small-
that
that's
possibility.
small.
So either way, just flagging for you, Mr. Chair, that we still would just, it's a very, as we'll report tomorrow, a lot accomplished yesterday with the task force, but a lot of work ahead and a very ambitious timeline. So we do want to retain a spot, whether it's that Thursday evening or Friday. So,
And we'll talk tomorrow, too, about the discipline task force in terms of y'all's meeting next month and whether you need space or can take a month off.
great.
Good.
Yeah, members, just to make sure you be thinking about for scheduling purposes, we will be contacting you likely pretty soon because the National Board rules that we pulled today, there are A to F rules. We will need to have a special, probably telephone meeting for those who need to call in sometime in the next few weeks. But we need to make that happen prior to the next monthly meeting. So just be aware, Kalisha will be following up with you after we determine when and which rules we'll be bringing to you for that.
All right, great. Anything else for today? I would invite a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Rice, second by Ms. Chambers. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We'll see you this evening for dinner.